the Thursday, February 24th meeting of the Nantucket Conservation Commission. Just a reminder, this meeting is being held entirely remotely via Zoom. Participants are asked to please mute your phone or device when you're not speaking so that you're not picked up by the recording. And please take care not to screen share your computer, as anything you screen share might be captured by tonight's recording. I ask that everybody raise their hand either virtually or on your screen to be recognized to speak, and I will recognize you as quickly as possible to speak. So at this point, I'll run through tonight's continuances. Under notices of intent, we have Lower Pacomo Nominee Trust at 88 Pacomo Road, continued until March 10th. We have Pacomo Point Realty Trust at 90 Pacomo Road, continued until March 10th. We have Town of Nantucket at Sacajah Pond, continued until March 10th. And then we have Linda Loring Nature Foundation at 90, 110, 124, 130, and 136 Eel Point Road, continued until March 10th. Under amended orders of conditions, we have Phillips Trustee at 19 East Tristram's Ave, continued until March 10th. And that's it for our continuances tonight. So we will open the meeting under public comment and see if anybody has public comment on items not on the agenda for this evening.
I do have one.
Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry, just for a public comment for tonight. For those who haven't had the pleasure yet or seen, we were able to start our office manager this past Tuesday. Lisa Graves is with us now, so if anyone has comments or questions or materials to file, please include her on any correspondence to the commission, as she'll be helping to distribute those. Her email address will be available up on our website, and she'll be the person answering the phone when you call in. So I know most of you have either met or gotten an email from her at this point already, but I at least wanted to let everybody in the public know.
Thank you, Jeff. We're excited to have that extra assistance in the Natural Resource Office.
You and me both.
And it's nice because Lisa is a former high school classmate of mine, so. Right.
Yeah, she's been great in just 3 days, so
yeah,
been nice to have her. That's it for me, though.
All right, and I didn't see anything on YouTube, so if there's no other public comment, we will begin under notices of intent. We have Island Orange Group at 129 Orange Street, represented by Mark Ritz.
Good evening, Mark Ritz with Site Design Engineering. I will be joined by Dan Malloy, also from Site Design, and Dave Fredericks, who is the project proponent. I'm going to get the presentation started, and they'll be here to answer any questions if any come up during the discussion. The project before you is, if you're not familiar with the number, it's Hatches. It's the package store side of Hatches and the gas station. We are proposing a number of site improvements to get the site into sort of basically a better condition. The entire property, as you may know, is currently developed and is used as a retail store, gas station. There's a bottle redemption facility out back, parking area out back. The site is surrounded on 3 sides by wetlands, which basically come up, it's the dashed green line shown on the plan, basically come up to the site boundaries. The site has been in this condition and in this use for an extended period of time. So we're proposing some site changes that are all kind of designed to improve existing conditions and existing uses of the site. So there are 4 main components that we're proposing as part of this site modification. So I'm going to go through them individually, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone may have. Let's start with the easiest. The first thing I'd like to discuss, we're proposing to install a pervious brick walkway that will start at Orange Street, come in along the south, sort of eastern little bit of the property, come down right in front of the to the entrance of the store, and will also extend down the east side of the building to allow for access to there's a set of stairs going to the second floor to there. Currently, the portion of the walkway going from Orange Street to the intersection of, where it goes in front of the building and down the side of the building, that's currently partially paved parking lot and just partially sort of trampled, altered, dirt. Right along the property boundary, there's a split rail fence there. We're proposing to maintain the split rail fence, put in a pervious brick walkway. The portion of the walkway in front of the store is currently concrete pad and or asphalt. And the portion of the walkway going down along the eastern side of the building is currently a portion of it is asphalt, and the rest of it is grass and stepping stone paths. So it'll be a little bit of a change, but it's really designed to sort of contain the pedestrian traffic and to allow for safe access from Orange Street to the retail store. Currently, people are walking through a portion of the parking lot that has, concrete stops in it and assorted other things. It's really a safety improvement for pedestrian access. The second item that we would like to do on the site, on the southern end of the building, there is an existing concrete pad which is fenced in and is partially fenced in, and it's used as a storage area for recycled materials. Because of sort of the open nature of that area and high winds in the area, despite best efforts to kind of keep things on site, occasionally stored recyclables get blown around, get blown into the wetland, into the parking area. The applicant would like to cover this concrete pad and enclose it so that basically the storage area for the recyclables is enclosed. There'll be no new impervious surface because this is already an existing concrete pad. We're just going to go directly above it to enclose it and roof it and enclose it so that it basically to keep things from being blown around to improve the site condition. The third thing we would like to do, currently there's a small loading dock, a loading area on the southwestern portion of the building, about halfway down that long skinny portion of the building. Trucks that come in to make deliveries to this area end up coming down that driveway, executing elaborate turns to get to the loading area, and often the split rail fence, if anyone's been down there, the split rail fence routinely gets damaged. The trucks occasionally push parking lot material into the edge of the wetland, and sometimes, if they're not careful, may actually end up, partially crossing that boundary. What the applicant would like to do is to construct a concrete loading dock that extends out perpendicular to the building. This will allow trucks to back directly down the driveway, access the loading area, and then pull out without executing any complicated maneuvers, without any possible encroachment into the wetland. We realize that this is new structure within the 25 and 50-foot buffer zone, but we feel that this will really minimize the amount of vehicle maneuvering and complexity that's required back there to access the loading area, and will actually be a net benefit to the wetland. We're proposing to put a roof over this loading dock and to infiltrate all of the runoff from this new roofed area into 2 infiltration units, one to the north of the dock, shown, small boxes shown on the plan, and one to the south of the dock. And that infiltration capacity has been designed to accommodate all of the runoff from that proposed new impervious surface. We would also like, as the fourth and final thing, we would like to, there is currently a berm along the southern portion of the property separating the parking area from the wetland. That berm is not currently very well vegetated. We're proposing to sort of reconstruct that berm, make it a little more robust, plant it with a native buffer seed and shrub mix to get it well vegetated. And we're also planning to extend a low berm along the western end of the property, along the parking and driveway area, to have a berm of about 1 foot to 1.5 feet high there. And also plant it with a native shrub and seed mix to try to help further contain any stormwater on the property, keep it from going directly into the wetland, have it infiltrate on site a little bit better. We feel that with the addition of the vegetated berm and the efforts to basically reduce impacts from existing uses on the site, that overall these project components will be a net benefit to the surrounding wetlands, as it'll allow us to maintain existing uses of the site and do so in a more environmentally friendly fashion. With that, I'll be happy to answer questions on any of the components.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding the berm, so it looks like the current grade of, where Hatches is, the driveway area is about 1 foot or 2 above the elevation of the wetland. So I'm wondering how high or how robust that berm would be to make sure that, water's not just going over that berm and then draining down. And then if I may as well, in regards to the enclosing the concrete slab that's being used as a recycling and trash receptacle with the structure, I don't feel like that's really an applicable benefit to the resource area. I understand that, there may be some refuse that's getting out of there, but I don't think a drastic solution like putting up a structure within the 25-foot buffer is needed. I think you could probably just get by with using some more heavy duty straps or locking things down a little bit better. So I prefer to see less development in that area.
Thank you, Seth. Do you want to reply, Mark?
If I may reply, in terms of the berm, yes, the parking area is about 1 foot or so higher than the wetland elevation along the driveway and access area. Down on the south, you can see that berm goes up to approximately 2 to 3 feet above the wetland. So the berm on the southern side has a max elevation right now of about a little over 10, and the wetland is down in the 7 to 8 range, depending where you are on the wetland. So on the south side, we'd keep that berm at around that 10-foot elevation. We just kind of straighten it out, make it a little bit more, just neaten it up a little bit. And along the western side, because of the sort of the narrowness of the lot, we need to maintain employee parking is in that southern area. So we need to maintain access to that. So the best we can do for having a berm along the western side is something on the order of 1 to 1.5 feet without actually crossing over and filling into the wetlands. So we're trying to improve it from what it is now, but we don't have the capacity there to really go up 2 or 3 feet and make something really robust without losing access to employee parking and access to the southern portion of the site.
Thank you, Mark. And Maureen, I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. And through you to Mark. I also was wondering, this berm, I don't think I've ever really realized there was a berm going in and out of hatches. Was it ever maintained in the past? I mean, from your description, it's just been kind of left to shift for itself for some chunk of time. So is this the first time this has been addressed in the recent past, or did the prior owners, did they attempt to do something and it didn't work? Or do you know?
Go ahead, Mark.
I believe on the southern end, that berm has had some maintenance, but it's currently, last time I saw it, which was a few weeks ago, it's mostly dirt and a few occasional weeds. What we're hoping to do is to actually, really maintain it and plant it with a decent mix of buffer shrubs and grasses so that it's a really robust vegetated berm. And if we are able to sort of limit larger vehicle access to that rear portion of the lot, the southern berm we should be able to maintain in a robust vegetated state without any problem, and the berm along the western edge, the shorter 1 to 1.5 foot high berm, that's something new that we're proposing to put in. There hasn't really been anything formalized there before. There's probably a little bit of a very small couple inches of berm just from the lot being cleared for snow because it's dirt. The dirt gets pushed up to the side, but I don't think anything really formal has ever been done along that western edge.
If I may, Ashley, so the plan would be that they would be actively, maintaining this, because it may not be the best soil in the world, given where it's been all that time. That I think this berm is pretty important to the health of the wetland, if that can be improved. So is there a maintenance plan of some kind for this? Or would there be a maintenance plan for this?
We would certainly be happy to maintain the intent is to have it there and to have it in working order. So we would certainly be happy to have a maintenance plan or to have an ongoing maintenance condition if the commission grants us an approval to maintain, the berm along that parking area.
Thank you. Maureen, go ahead.
Yeah, may I ask a different question?
Yes.
Okay. Obviously we all know this site and it's been completely developed for a long time. And that just I'm a little concerned just in general. Whenever we have a site that is, and one of the other applicants tonight it's a developed area, and there's something of a sense that, well, there's already something there in the 25. So, whatever we do isn't going to really make things any worse. And so I was wondering if for the pad that's there that you want to put an enclosure around, which frankly, I think would be a good idea from the point of view of trash and things blowing around and the rest of it. But is it necessary to retain that concrete foundation? I was wondering if there was a way to put something on that and that's non-pervious, and so there'd be an improvement to that area, because given the development of the area, other than the berm, there's not much that can be that I'm seeing here that would really be an improvement or so I was wondering if that would be something that you think you might entertain.
Mark?
We could certainly, I'd have to go back to the team to discuss additional options for that, but we could certainly discuss that and perhaps bring that back to the commission in terms of possibly getting rid of the concrete slab and using some alternative flooring, bottom, whatever, to maintain that. Well, we're just I forgot to mention in the earlier discussion, we're also currently that concrete slab is just a slab. When we roof that, or propose to roof that, the drainage from that area will also go into the infiltrator. So we are proposing to improve the situation there a bit by taking, an existing impervious area and infiltrating it along with the roofed area for the proposed loading dock. I forgot to mention that in my earlier spiel. So.
Mark? And
Thank
then
you.
I'll Seth. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you, Ashley. Through you, Mark, I know this is a very difficult site, and it's been there forever. But I'm struggling with seeing the net benefit of these improvements on the property in terms of protecting our natural resources and the resource area, rather. So could you help me on that with your net benefit you'll be providing? Because there'll be some pretty good waivers asked for here. And I think I need more help with that.
If I may,
Mark.
the main net benefit here, from enclosing the slab, we're hoping to contain the recycling material from being blown around the site. I mean, the site is currently, they make every effort to clean things up, but obviously if debris doesn't end up in the wetland in the first place, that's better. The main improvement, though, is with the loading dock is to keep delivery trucks that service the island are getting larger and larger with each passing year, and the individual clients have very little say in what ends up bringing their goods. And right now, trucks are routinely knocking down the split rail fence and encroaching into the wetland as they try to maneuver to the existing loading area. The proposed dock would let them just straight shot back down that existing driveway right to the dock, not have to execute any maneuvers. There'd be no risk of trucks running off the edge of through the fence and into the wetland. And so that would be, this is a site that gets a lot of deliveries currently, and that would really minimize the amount of truck maneuvering required on the site, and would really keep any traffic from encroaching into the wetland and keep it from pushing any debris or soil or fence parts into the wetland. So that's the major net benefit there. Maintenance and planting of the berm would provide some native vegetation where there currently is very little on the site. It's we'd be providing about 10 to 15 foot buffer that on the southern side that currently isn't vegetated with native vegetation. The berm around the southern part of the parking area would minimize runoff, direct runoff from the site. It would let water infiltrate a little bit better on the site. Proposed drainage over that concrete slab into the infiltrators will reduce the amount of surface runoff on the site. We don't have a lot of room, unfortunately, here to propose major vegetation or restoration. So we're really trying to, our net benefits are minimizing impacts from existing ongoing grandfathered uses and trying to carve out a little bit of a vegetated buffer where possible.
Does that answer your question, Mark? Oh, you're muted.
It sort of does, but to me, a loading dock looks like it's 90 degrees to the building. So the trucks can't drive right directly to it, the way I see it. They'll still be backing and filling to get to back up to that loading dock. Am I incorrect? Am I looking at I'm looking at the plan now on my computer, and there's that 35-foot loading dock is at 90 degrees. So I assume they're going to be backing in there.
If you look at the plan, there's a small gray box inside that larger hatched black box. That's the current pad that trucks back up to, and there's a door, a loading door on that side of the building going into the building. So trucks, to get the back of the truck near that door, they have to basically orient themselves approximately like that loading dock is. What we would have with this loading dock extending perpendicular to the building, trucks would have to back down the driveway, but they would not have to turn to get the rear of the truck up against the building. They would just back directly to the portion of the loading dock that extends out from the building, unload there, and then drive straight forward out of the site.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate Mr. Ritz's comments, but I do tend to feel the same as some of my other fellow commissioners here, that it's important to, really flesh out when we're talking about improvements over existing conditions. What are those improvements to? Are they to the experience of the store owners, or are they to the wetland interests that are protected? Because although I definitely agree that this will make it easier for operations to run, and for even in some cases the public to access this site, I am worried about the fact that it's a significant extension of structure in areas where structure is not allowed. And I've heard this argument many times, and it kind of annoys me. I see applicants come in saying, right now, or we need a change to what's happening right now, because right now we're not able to do what we need to without causing a obstruction into the wetland. So basically they're saying right now we're doing something that is a violation that we could issue an enforcement action on. If we saw trucks backing into the wetland, they're saying, oh, okay, because of that, we need a change to the site layout. And I am sympathetic to the fact that it's not the store necessarily that determines which trucks come or not. I don't run a package store. I don't know how that works. But I think that that's sort of outside our purview. Our purview is to determine if what's being presented is going to cause an impact to the wetlands. And I think the added structures here certainly will. That being said, I just do have one more question that I think is probably to Jeff Carlson, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any ability within the Wetlands Protection Act or the local bylaw to, in order of conditions, to ask that project applicants do off-site mitigation rather than on-site? So if they didn't have, the ability to, let's say do native replanting here, could they apply funds to a different project somewhere else on the island?
That's a great question.
It is a good question. This is only the first hearing, Seth, so you gotta, let me warm up a little bit. But I think through the state act and through other state agencies, offsite mitigation is something that has come up, and I don't want to say is routinely done, but definitely is done, right? Natural Heritage does a lot of offsite mitigation. I think the tricky part with offsite mitigation obviously deals with your ability to control a site and how that works and whether or not you have access to it. If it's simple funds, I don't know how the town's capacity would deal with that. I think to answer that question completely, I'll probably have to ask the finance director for the mechanism to that. I mean, I think clearly there could be some sort of obviously can accept a gift for an explicit purpose to do something, but I think you'd want something identified in advance clearly. And there's a process for that, but I'll have to check with Brian Turbot and get a better answer to that question.
I know I had not a similar question to Seth's, but a similar thought. And I was wondering what sort of stakeholding you guys had in the surrounding wetlands to that property, just to see if, invasive species or any improvement could be made there. But I'm not sure who is in control of those wetlands.
I don't know if that's something that Dave could answer. I don't believe we are in control of those properties. We could certainly continue that discussion further, but in terms of what we control, it's really the 99.98% developed and used commercial property right now. So we don't have a tremendous amount of leeway to go off property into those actual wetland areas. Certainly something that could be discussed though.
Okay.
Sorry, Dave Fredericks, can I try to answer that if that's possible?
Yep, go ahead.
So I think the plan that you're seeing is what's under our control. I believe there's a small piece of the wetlands that are owned by the town. And I think the majority is owned by the association called the Commons, which is the property that is on the south side. So it's not something we have direct control over. Again, to your point, I welcome the idea of looking at what are different ways for us to improve the wetlands that we're allowed to and able to do. I don't think we're opposed to trying to do anything. We're trying to be good stewards. We're trying to improve the conditions that we found ourselves in. And one of the approaches here was, how do we improve all over the site? The management of trash in every aspect, right? So separately from the issues that exist with the deliveries, has been a whole lot of thinking about, we can do certain things and we're doing those. We've ordered all kinds of different trash receptacles and recycling bins, and they'll be scattered throughout the property we have and the adjacent property. And so when you see some of the other improvements, it's all about thinking about this as holistically as we can to say, we need to raise the bar on everything that we can do to make it easy to recycle, everything we can do to manage trash in a better way, because it's heartbreaking to see it in not just the wetlands alongside the edges of our property, but along the entire wetlands in that area. And so, it's the idea here was to put forward some ideas on how to make a bigger difference related to that problem. So we saw those two distinct problems: the damage being done with the delivery trucks, which we're trying to find the best solution in the world we live in, and then the overall issue of the trash that's plagues that bigger area than this, but certainly is around the wetlands that we share some of the property lines.
Thank you. Speaking of that, I had a kind of a second question, because it looks like you had a dumpster proposed for behind the loading dock. And I guess I was just surprised that dump trucks, and I realize they're smaller than like 18 wheelers, but that they were going to maneuver around the loading dock to get to the dumpster. I just thought that, all of those sorts of materials would be kind of further away from the wetland with this proposal. And I wasn't sure if that was a possibility.
I would say, and I'll let, others speak on this as well. I think that, once we get a sense of what we might be able to do, I was there today with Bob, who's the manager of the store, and we actually had a very similar conversation, which is, the placement of that dumpster. How do we put it in a place that it's, again, as far as we can from the wetlands, but also to not accidentally produce another problem with how the trucks back in. So some of those details, I think, we probably should come back to you folks, in your next meeting or once we've heard these comments and address a couple of those things, because even that issue, we've been bouncing around trying to find that right answer.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from commissioners before I open it up to the public? Looks like no, so we'll open Island Orange Group up for public comment. It does not look like we have anything on YouTube right now. So if we don't have any public comment, Mark and Dave, would you guys like to continue for 2 weeks?
Yes, I think that'd be best. We can continue for 2 weeks, come back with a little further discussion of some of these issues.
Okay, so this will continue then until March 10th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
And that moves us on to 13 Commercial Street LLC at 13 Commercial Wharf, represented by Paul Santos.
Thank you, Ashley. Paul Santos from Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the current property owner, 13 Commercial Street LLC. This is a residentially zoned property located on the south side of Commercial Wharf. It's adjacent to New Whale Street, and it's across the street from the Nantucket Electric Company property. And it is bordered by Commercial Street to the north and the Nantucket Harbor to the south. The property contains a single-family residential structure that has been there for some time. In 2008, a prior owner sought approval for a renovation and expansion of the existing dwelling, and that's how the dwelling currently sits today. That renovation at the time involved expanding the existing dwelling, replacing or eliminating an old wood bulkhead that existed on the property, and elevating the site to be flood zone compliant with the regulations in effect at that time by placing the property completely on a wood pier foundation. So it's an elevated structure, completely elevated on wood piers. The site itself actually contains, it abuts Nantucket Harbor. In fact, that is the property line is the mean high water of the harbor. And then there is also a coastal beach associated with the harbor itself that actually runs underneath a portion of the existing structure. You'll notice there is the line of the harbor is shown on the plan. Then there is 3 dashed lines. The first one being the edge of the coastal beach. Then you have the 25-foot setback, and then you have the 50-foot setback. The structure itself is located on the coastal beach. It's located within the 25, and portions of it are also located within the 50-foot setback. At the time the commission approved this in 2008, an order of conditions was filed, waivers were granted, and the ultimate finding at that time was that renovating and elevating the house will restore and aid the natural functions of the coastal resource areas and will be a long-term net benefit and improvement to the coastal resource areas found on the property. That was the decision, the determination made in 2008 that currently put the building in the position that it is in today. The application before you today is twofold. One is to come back again to elevate or raise the structure because now it is not compliant with the 2014 flood mapping that took place. And by doing that, the structure would be elevated above the existing pier system to be compliant with the current flood zone standards. The site is actually located within a velocity zone that abuts a AE zone. The velocity zone, I believe, is elevation 8. The AE zone is approximately elevation 9, which both extend from the harbor to the north. The site's not listed or mapped by NHESP under the Mass Endangered Species Act. Property itself contains an area of 6,440 square feet. And actually, Commercial Street or Commercial Wharf actually traverses over this property with the benefit of an easement. So the property itself actually is on the north side, extends to the north side of Commercial Street. And the town has a benefit of an easement to cross this property to access Commercial Street and ultimately New Wales Street. So within this request, the proposal, the applicant is looking to raise the existing dwelling. And we're also asking for construction of an addition, the relocation of a driveway with associated grading, landscaping, and utility installation within land subject to coastal storm flowage and the buffer zone to a coastal beach. The fact that the system is, the building is getting raised, they've been to the HDC with regard to this. The building, for those of you who are familiar with the building, and I believe there are some pictures in the site, it's pretty much just a big box. And the front of the building, as you look at Commercial Street, is just kind of a latticed area in the front of the building. The building is accessed from the westerly side through an enclosed porch area to gain access to the site. And talking with the HDC and going to the HDC, I think they felt that the fact that the building was going to be elevated or needed to be elevated was an opportunity to kind of change the architectural components of the structure and break up the big box look of it itself and provide an access to the dwelling from Commercial Street as opposed to the easterly property line. They also felt that the fact that the land bank property to the west, which is Mickey Rowland's building, which is ultimately going to be moved, that this building would be more visible from the harbor, and that this was potentially an opportunity to provide some architectural enhancement to the building itself, as Mickey's building or the land bank building would ultimately be relocated. So the application itself does require waivers, not so much for the elevating of the structure, but for the fact that the proponent is asking to do two things with regard to the building. The existing side entry or enclosed porch area, if you will, they would like to enclose that area. It is already structure. They would simply like to enclose that area and then add to the front or the north side of this building and add access to the building along the front side. This does require waivers. We have provided a waiver request. It is a waiver of your 50-foot setback. The situation here, though, is the fact that the complete building itself is already within the 25 and 50. The expansion of the building would be further away from the resource area. It would essentially be on the streetscape, if you will, along Commercial Street. And while we're not getting any closer to the resource area, the building itself would still be constructed on the pile foundation system. There'd still be a free flow of stormwater within this area. And while this current application may not necessarily have a net benefit, the fact that the work that's been done on the site previously we've asked for the waiver under the fact that there would be no adverse impact or not adversely impact the interest identified in the bylaw with regard to adding the addition off the front side of this building. The addition itself, I believe, is approximately, including the stairway, is approximately 15 feet in length, projected closer to Commercial Street. I believe Anne is on the call. She is also the current owner. Property was in the same owner's hand that redeveloped it in 2008 until it changed hands fairly recently to the current owners. Happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Paul. Mark, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. I see a very easy solution to a waiver being issued, because there's an opportunity to do a net benefit of raising the house, moving it back, and not doing the addition involved. Adding the addition forces you to stay in the beyond, you're well in the wetland area or in the high tide. So I think adding the addition sort of forces you to stay there. Whereas if you were to move the house back, there would be a very obvious net improvement. And that would be my thought. Does that make any sense? The owner won't be happy about that, but that's kind of where I come from.
Thank you, Mark. I have to say, I would have a difficult time, I think, approving the addition component on this project, given that, it's within the 50. So that's definitely something I find, again, difficult to approve. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with yourself and Mr. Beal. I think applying the waiver that's requested for no adverse impacts, no reasonable alternatives to propose addition within the 50-foot buffer to the coastal beach is not warranted here. I think the proposed elevation of the structure is positive, and I don't really have any issue with the proposed enclosure since it's already structural footprint. But the addition, even if elevated, has issues that will cause adverse impacts, including stormwater runoff from the roof and probably some others that I will think of at some point. But I just don't think that's a responsible use of our waivering process.
Thank you, Seth. Any other questions or comments? Maureen?
I would join my fellow commissioners who have spoken already and say I cannot see what the proposed addition does for the resources that we are protecting. I just don't see it. Mark Beal's idea to move the house back is something. That's the kind of thinking that I would prefer to see, as opposed to, well, we want to do this because it'll be better for other interests other than the ones that we're supposed to protect, and have more thought done to something that, okay, you want your house in a better shape, but to do it without adding structural components within the 50. So I would not, I don't see a reason to grant that waiver.
Thank you, Maureen. If there aren't any other questions or comments from commissioners, I'll open it up for public comment. Does not look like we have anything on YouTube at this point. So Paul, what would you like to do here?
I would like to continue. Obviously, we still have the element of the elevating of the structure. I think I've gotten some feedback on the enclosure of the porch area, which without the reworking of the front to the addition, I'm not sure how that would play. So there's some architectural things we need to look at. And I would like to continue.
Okay. Would you like to continue for 2 weeks until March 10th?
That would be my request. Yes.
Okay. Well, Thank you, Paul. This will continue until March 10th.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
All right, and that moves us on to Mcausland at 10 Smooth Hummucks Way, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm before you tonight with a notice of intent application for a set of after-the-fact beach stairs at the end of Smooth Hummucks. The stairs were built to replace a set of stairs that previously existed and were lost. There was a change that was made to the stairs where they take a turn to the left instead of going straight down. And the owner felt that that it would be better to keep them as far away from the the water when it comes all the way up than to have a straight set. So we're in here to file for the after the fact construction of this set of stairs. And now the owner now understands that even the replacement of what was there, or if something was lost, would require a permit. And we are waiting for a file number, but I'm happy to take any questions or concerns that you may have. They're a timber set of stairs, and there's photos in the packet.
Thank you, Art. I know this is one that obviously the owner wasn't aware they needed a permit for, but this would be a great location for aluminum stairs. So if they ever need to be replaced again, I think that should be the next material.
I can convey that.
Yeah. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe this could just get set in the order of conditions section, but I strongly feel that any projects that come in for after the fact approval should have in the permit findings that the structure was built without the benefit of a permit. I don't see any issues with how it is permitted, and I would be willing, or how it is built, sorry, and I'd be willing to write a positive order of conditions for the structure. But I just think that it needs to go on the deed so that the owner and any future owners are aware of the fact that this was done without our permission.
Thank you, Seth. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll open it up to public comment. Does not look like we have anything on YouTube. So Jeff, do we have everything? Oh, we don't have a file number, is that right? Yeah.
I'd like to request a continuance, Madam Chair, to the 10th.
Perfect. Thank you, Art. So this will continue until March 10th.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have 34 Easton Realty Trust at 34 Easton Street, also represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a developed residential property. We were before you, well, maybe about 6 months ago for the rebuild or replacement of the dock on this property. And this is for the work on the upland portion of the property to remove the existing structure and construct a new structure that is compliant with flood zone requirements. We would remove the portion of the existing structure, which is within the 50-foot buffer zone. The new structure would be outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. Of course, it is all within land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the foundation would meet the requirements for both flood zone from building code perspective as well as for the commission. And there's no change of grade that's proposed with the project. And that's pretty much it. I'd be happy to take, and likewise, I don't have a file number, but I'd be happy to take questions or concerns at this point that you might have with the application.
Thank you, Art. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. So we'll open it up to public comment. Does not look like we have public comment at this time. So commissioners, any thoughts to leave Art with before we continue? Looks like no. So Art, would you like to continue this one until March 10th as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this will continue until March 10th. And that moves us on to Nantucket Island's Land Bank at 321 Pulpus Road, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm before you tonight for an application for the land bank to essentially clean up a property that they purchased. They're proposing to remove all of the structures, and there's some debris throughout the property, some little sheds and shacks, and there's a septic system. And essentially they just want to clean everything up, which you can see on the aerial. Some of it is located within the resource area. That would be done. There's paths and access ways. This is a sort of the area of the property which is shown to the north of the green line, which would be our limit of work, would be has been historically disturbed and used for quite some time. So it's really a cleanup and restoration project with as minimal disturbance as possible. The house is the main element, which has the main driveway that goes into it. I envision that it would likely be put into roll-off containers and taken away.
Thank you, Art. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? It's like, no, I know. I'm happy to see this one go to land bank. There had been some cutting I noticed on one of the buffer sides happening in the last few years. So I'm glad to see it's going to get cleaned up. At this point, if there's no commissioners' questions, we'll open it up to the public. It does not look like we have public comment, and we're also missing a file number on this one. So Art, would you like to continue for 2 weeks?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this will continue until March 10th.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to Helzapoppin Trust at 25 Willard Street, represented by David Haynes. But David, I don't know if you're muted. David, we can't hear you.
Sorry, modern technology. You hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Thank you. Sorry for that. This is a notice of intent to do work on an existing house on 25 Willard. The house was put here probably in right around 1938. It was moved from Hulbert Ave. So it has a historic nature to it. Its work, the site contains a bordering vegetated wetland, a portion of which is actually lawn, been maintained as lawn since the house was put there. Land subject coastal storm flowage, and all the up to elevation 7, and all the resulting buffer zones 25, 50, and 100. Almost the entire site is within the 100 either wetland or 100-foot buffer zone. The house is, I would say, 2/3 to 3/4 within 50 feet of the BVW as it currently sits. The proposed work that we're asking to do is to enclose an existing porch, two existing, well, one, it's a wraparound porch sort of, and 2 portions of it, to enclose it into living space. It has a roof over it, and to put a second story on it. And then also another addition on the far side of the house, over on the street side, outside of 50, but mostly over an existing deck. Also, the house to meet building codes for flooding. The house will be raised up to above the flood elevation to an elevation of 8.25. It does need a new foundation under it. It's certain, I don't know how it's still sitting there. It's sitting on piles of vertical piles of single cinder blocks, dry laid. And anyway, they're going to put a new foundation under it, either with helical piers or a spreader foundation of spreader footing, and with flood vents. And actually, they'd a rat slab down in the basement, but with drains through it, so any flood waters could come in and infiltrate, or any groundwater that during flooding. Obviously, it does flood in this area, but it could drain, would maintain it as a permeable surface or allow infiltration. The waivers that we're asking for are work within on the existing structure within 25 and 50 feet, and also for work within 2 feet of the water table for the foundation. We are asking for it. We feel that, the other thing is we are proposing to allow the wetland that has been mowed for 80 years to revegetate as wetland species. It's got some sedges and rushes in it. It's mostly grasses, and it'll come back nicely as a wetland. And so to return that to its wetland status, so that would be an improvement. But we are asking for the waivers for the water table and the structural work, in that there are no other reasonable alternatives. And also that it will not impact, since that is an existing structure within the 25, we're not encroaching any further. It will not impact it anymore. The water table being within 2 feet, we're not planning to dewater. The helical piers would allow, and the spreader footing would allow water to still migrate through that area. And there's, since the water table is so high in that area, there's no way around it. And so there's no other reasonable alternative. And it will not impact, because we're not going to do any temporary or permanent dewatering. When I spoke to Jeff Carlson about this application, and he suggested, if we're going to pick the house up, why don't we move it a little bit and get it over closer to the road, try to get it outside of as much of it as possible, at least outside of 25, and that would be an improvement. We are looking at that right now, and we were just trying to keep it in the same location because of the historical nature of it. But we would be willing to move it over to the setback line off of the road if that can be done. So that, in summary, that's in a nutshell. Oh, also, we were removing the existing garage, which would allow us to do that, move that building up over into that location a little bit more, and try to increase our setback to the wetlands. With that, if you have any questions or comments, I know it's not an easy one, but it's what was dealt.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the willingness of the representative to consider the moving of the house farther away from the wetland buffers. Even if we can't get it entirely out of the 50 on the site, trying to get outside the 25 would be preferable.
Thank you for your comments, Seth. I would agree with you. Maureen?
As would I. What Jeff's suggestion was exactly the notes that I had made on this. Can't you move it up there? So I think that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Mark, I see a thumbs up. Are you in agreement? Okay. So, David, it looks like, if possible, we would love to see, this proposal with the house moved as far away, as possible, in order to just reestablish some of those buffer zones. I am, very happy to see they're going to try and let the wetland, revegetate and restore. So that's definitely a positive component. If there are no other questions or comments from commissioners, we'll open it up for public comment. It does not look like we have anything on YouTube as of now. So David, what would you like to do? Would you like to continue this one?
Yes, please.
Okay, so 2 weeks would be March 10th.
We're going to try for that, but I think that should work.
Okay, perfect. So this will continue until March 10th.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the storm.
Thank you. You too.
Really quick, Madam Chair.
Yes, Jeff.
I was just gonna say, Commissioner Williams was able to hop on, so she is here now as well, if she's off on a second screen for you or something.
Okay, yes, I just saw her kind of come in. Thank you. Hi, Linda.
I'm
and
here.
Yes.
I could not the other night when we had that special meeting. I don't know how to go off of mute, but I was on the meeting. I just couldn't figure out how to go off mute.
Okay. Yeah, there were so many screens. I didn't see you that time, but
How do you go when you're on the phone link? How do you *6 to go off of mute, or how do you do that?
I haven't Zoomed from a phone, so I'm not sure what the commands are. That's a good question.
Well, with my flip phone, it was really lost.
Yeah, I could say that's probably nearly impossible to navigate. So good for you for even trying.
I heard it, but I couldn't get there from here.
Yeah.
I'll confirm, *6 is supposed to work.
It didn't. So there you go.
All right, so we're moving on in the agenda. We have Nantucket Longevity Trust at 52 Monomoy Road, represented by Jennifer Carberg.
Thank you, Ashley, and good evening, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Jen Carberg. I'm a coastal ecologist, wetland ecologist, and I'm here helping out the homeowners at 52 Monomoy Road, two of whom at least are on the call here, Stephen and Pam Linebeck. Stephen and Pam came to myself and Vince Murphy a couple months ago. They have a property in Monomoy. You can see it here on this figure. And the beach is fronted by this fringing salt marsh. So there's, at low tide, there's beach, and there's harbor, beach, this small, thin, fringing salt marsh, and then behind it, more beach. And as the tides move in and out, the high tide line kind of moves just up into that salt marsh area. On this property, they kind of have an area, and you can see it in the box here, of the salt marsh that's been opened up. And part of it is from historic damage to the salt marsh, pulling boats over it, many, many, many years ago. And because it was a low weak spot now, it's the space that all high tide and higher high tide water moves through, and then is eroding the beach behind the salt marsh. It's the easiest place for the water to go here. And so we were looking at ways to kind of do a pilot project here that would help increase the resiliency of that beach and reduce loss of the beach, and maybe even get some salt marsh restoration happening here. So the project that they came up with, and we kind of thought might be a great pilot project to test here, is to see if we can get the salt marsh to kind of revegetate itself. So, right now it's just bare sand and some muck. And there are actually, Jeff, if you go down one more, sorry, they're sideways, but you can see the site, there we go. You can see the site photos there with water actually coming in that opening between the two salt marsh pieces, and that used to be connected. So our hope is to try and see how we can restore that pretty easily and have it be a pilot project that other people within the harbor that have these fringing salt marshes can duplicate on their properties. And so the proposal is to use really minimal kind of sand fencing running parallel to the harbor on either side of the salt marsh there to start to capture sand that's moving through naturally on its own. It will also help keep pedestrians out of this restoration area where we want to do some planting. They can still move up and down the beach and in front of the salt marsh when there's lower tides. We're not going to impede access here. It's a really popular walking area. But the sand fencing will help capture sand naturally that's moving through here. And then this year, plant out Spartina alterniflora smooth cordgrass, which is the native salt marsh grass that should be out there. And we've looked at doing, the recommendation is to plant in gallon-sized pots, kind of stagger the plants so that they look a little bit more natural, and see how they take. That's kind of as simple as the restoration proposal is. The sand fencing will come down at the end of the season or prior to any, big nor'easter storm. We don't want debris all over the beach down here. And we're going to track plants. We're going to count how many we put in, see how many survive, and then track them in the following year to look at survival and see how sediment is accumulating here and how the salt marsh is restoring itself. We did get feedback from the Department of Marine Fisheries, who recommended that we not just monitor plants at the end of this season, but also at the end of, after a whole winter and see how the plants survive out there. And we're happy to do that as well and report. They did mention that this project abuts land containing shellfish and that there is an eelgrass bed nearby. The concern is primarily like increased sedimentation moving into the harbor from any disturbance that we might be doing with planting. So, we'll definitely be doing the planting at low tides when there's not water pulling sediment out as we're digging holes. If it looks like that's not as effective, we can also put, as we're digging holes for the plants, put the sediment in, put the sand into buckets, and whatever we don't end up using can get put outside of the high tide line, just back on the beach, so that we're not putting excess sediment back into the harbor. The work is really designed to capture sediment. The sand fencing will do that, but so will the native plants as well. We are entirely within resource areas, both the coastal beach and the salt marsh. So we are within 25 feet of the resource area in a non-water dependent use. So we do request a waiver for that. And we also request a waiver because we are changing the species composition of the marsh, but essentially there are no species now. We're adding them back for restoration purposes. So we believe that the waiver can happen under, no adverse impacts and a long-term net benefit to the site as the salt marsh hopefully reestablishes here. And that is our proposal. We're happy to take questions. And as I mentioned, the property owners are here too as well if there's questions that they can answer.
Thank you, Jen. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Linda? Oh.
If they're going to revegetate where they've been dragging boats back and forth for years, previous owners, are they not going to do that anymore? They're going to leave it so it can revegetate and they're not going to be disturbing it anymore by coming across it to get to the property? Because there is a path there.
Correct, Linda. Sorry, Ashley, if I may. Correct, Linda. The intention is not to drag boats through there. And actually, Stephen is here. Stephen, do you want to say, I know it's been quite a while since you've used that as any kind of access point, correct?
Yeah, Steve Leinbach here. My family's had the property since 1949, so really there are no previous owners that I know of. We haven't launched boats there for over 50 years at this point. And the intention is to close that up and not, and to help preserve the beach. So no, there's not going to be any boat launching there, period.
I knew your family had had it, but I wasn't sure that somebody else hasn't bought it, but that's great. Not too many of us left, that.
Right. We're just trying to, keep what's there and, protect the beach and, try and build it back up a little bit. A lot of the erosion has gone out through that opening.
Right.
And hopefully if we can replant it, that'll, slow down the wave action. Maybe some sand will accrete behind the Spartina grass there.
I appreciate the effort. Thanks.
I have to say, I was excited to read this one, and I knew immediately the spot on Monomoy you were talking about because I've walked past it and been very curious. But part of my curiosity has also been with the actual property and the paved driveway that kind of leads right down to this open spot, and the shed that's right there too, and the impact those structures are having. And I was just wondering if there's kind of any way to mitigate, again, runoff coming from that pavement, because I feel like that's an unsaid piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. That driveway has been there since, I think that was put in 61 when they were launching boats there. And that's it. The shed was actually, there were two sheds there that were down on the wharf before Beinecke renovated it. And they brought those from the wharf there. And when they kind of fell apart, we were allowed to rebuild it as one shed. The shed is up on sonotube pilings right now. And when we have these big storms now, it just flows underneath and flows back out again. The driveway itself is there, and we don't have any plans to alter it right now. If there's any way to divert the water, from rain or something coming down, I'd be interested in looking into that. It does fall off on either side of that driveway by about 4 or 5 feet down into some very marshy kind of place, which I believe will probably end up becoming more of a salt marsh as the tide keeps marching up toward us.
Yes, I would imagine that. Well, again, I appreciate your effort to restore this area.
Thank you. Ashley, if I may, real quick.
Yep.
Just on that point, I think that if we get this salt marsh, well established and stop the water coming in with high tides, or kind of spread it more along the beach, then it might become pretty obvious if there is runoff from the driveway that is coming straight down onto the beach. And then maybe, we could think about what other next steps, if there's a shrub border or something but that could be a next step after this. This would help inform that, I would think.
Okay, thank you. Can any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no, so we'll open it up for public comment. RJ?
Thank you, Chair Erisman. RJ Turcott on behalf of the Nantucket Land Council. We'd just like to commend the linebacks and Dr. Carberg as well. This is a great project, and we're really hoping that more property owners in these areas which have fringing salt marsh will follow suit and try to work on these. They're really critical habitat. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, RJ. I'll just look quickly at YouTube. It does not look like we have a public comment on YouTube. Just want to make sure. So we do have a file number on this one. So what would you guys like to do? Would you like to close tonight?
Yeah, I think we'd request to close. Thank you.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Mark, seconded by Linda. So by roll vote, Beal.
Aye.
Engelborg.
Aye.
Erisman, aye. Phillips.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. Thank you all, commissioners, for your time and your hard work. We really appreciate what you're trying to do to help keep the eye on the island.
Well, thank you. And really, it's homeowners like you doing the responsible things that we need more of. So we appreciate it. All right, so that moves us on to Nantucket Yacht Club Incorporated at 1 South Beach Street, represented by Leo Azadorian.
Yes, for the applicant, Nantucket Yacht Club, Leo Azadorian, and I believe.
Hold on 1 second, Leo. Mark?
For the record, I'm a member of the Nantucket Yacht Club, and I feel I can serve with an open mind.
Okay. Thank you for stating that. Sorry to interrupt, Leo. Go ahead.
No problem. And I believe Richard Fitzgerald from AGM is also going to speak on behalf of this application. What you have before you is an existing structure, an existing license structure, and the license allows and it requires the structure and the piles to be maintained in good order. And AGM did an inspection last year, the end of last year, to look at the piles that are supporting this structure as well. And the photographs in the notice that I submitted show that a lot of them are in disrepair. And also the wave screen that skirts the building also had some damage done over a period of years, and they plan on replacing those. If Richard's online here now, I'd like him to speak about the procedure that he's doing and what he found when they did the inspection.
Good evening. My name is Richard Fitzgerald. I'm an engineer for AGM Marine Contractors. We did inspect the underside of the pier and building structure, supported by timber piles, a number of timber piles as seen in the drawing. If you have that other drawing up. There, thank you. And then around the perimeter, there's a wave fence to help keep wave action down from inside. Damage that we noted consisted of marine boar activity, which basically eats timber piles. They live in salt water. Also damage there. You can see that on some of the piles, they have a concrete jacket that was a previous repair. In some of those, the concrete has spalled. Other is bolts have corroded over time, and some upper structure damage was timber pile caps and stringers were damaged. What we're proposing to do is basically repair and replace in kind. There'll be no increase in footprint except for the 3 piles on number 19 where we're proposing to put a concrete jacket around those piles. They've had some significant marine boar damage, and that's why we're going to put the concrete jacket around those. Other piles will be just cutting sections out that are damaged from either marine boar or rot, and replace those with new timber sections. And that's basically about it. The drawing lists the damage that we noted, and then also below shows the repairs that we're proposing.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. So we'll open it up to public comment. It does not look like we have public comment on YouTube at the moment. So if there are no comments or questions from commissioners, Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close this one?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Leo, would you guys like to close?
Certainly would.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal.
On second thought, I will abstain.
Okay. Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries with Commissioner Beal abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to 88 Pacomo LLC at 88 Pacomo Road, represented by Mark Ritz.
Good evening once again, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 88 Pacomo. You might recall this property from a few weeks ago. We had a cert of compliance for the beach stairs. The project before you this evening is residential development of the property. The applicant is proposing to construct a single-family house, porches, decks, patios, et cetera, the usual development. The only portion of the proposed work that will be within jurisdiction is a portion of the house will be outside, it'll all be outside the 50-foot buffer. The porches and decks will be outside of the 50-foot buffer. The actual building foundation itself at its closest point is approximately 70 to 75 feet from the top of the bank. And there will be some landscaping and grading within the 100-foot buffer. Other items like the septic, pool, driveway, all that other site improvements are well outside of the 100-foot buffer to the top of the bank. So basically, it's a single-family residence with a couple porches on the waterfront side and some landscaping and grading. All structures outside the 50-foot buffer, all alteration outside the 25. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Mark. I was curious, and it could have been in the packet information, but I couldn't find it. What's the erosion rate here?
The erosion rate, I believe I had that. It is well under a foot a year. It's let me just look quickly if I called it out. I thought I had it. I can't seem to find it as I'm scanning through quickly. It's a very slow erosion rate. It is under a foot a year, so we're well below the threshold in the regs in terms of of distance, and we understand obviously that we wouldn't be entitled to any future protection of the structure. But on this particular part of Pacomo, we were looking at something just under a foot a year for the CZM shoreline rate.
Thank you, Mark. Jeff?
So I actually have it in my notes here. It's the CZM rate for the lot is 66 hundredths of a foot per year.
Okay.
And just as a reminder to everybody too, our local regulations, this is a new structure for a coastal bank, actually requires a condition to go in any order of conditions that prohibits the use of a coastal engineering structure going forward for protection of the house.
That's a good one. And I also think this is one, I know we started putting it in for some, and then I think maybe hadn't been, but when the structure does go into the 50, then that should trigger them coming back in front of us. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Linda?
Maybe a simplistic question. Why can't you just cite it further back?
I think it's a good question.
I don't know why we would want to even entertain anything closer than it needs to be. And I understand the monstrosity that's north of you might block that view. Not too much going on south of you, but I'm not interested in what's going on with Gamble's house. I'm just concerned as to why this wouldn't be cited further back, just to eliminate this as a problem, or our involvement, frankly.
I think it's a good question, Linda. I think a lot of times it falls under what our regulations allow, and people want to be as close as they can. But I don't know, Mark, if you guys have looked at moving that further back.
If I may, I mean, the regulations as they are currently written allow structures outside of the 50. The applicant looked at their site. They met with their architects and designers and basically decided that, this is what they'd like to do. They've actually set the house, the foundation of the house back about, 70 plus feet, which is, it could always be further, but it's not as close as it could be either. And they were just going with what is, regularly and typically permissible under the regs.
Thank you, Mark. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. the grading section detail that's presented, is that meant to be across the entire width of the site from the 25 to the 50-foot buffer zone, or I guess from the wetland, from the coastal bank, the top of coastal bank to the buffer zone, or is that only like right in front of the proposed dwelling?
That's sort of a typical section right at the center of the proposed dwelling. It would be less to the north and to the south. I included that because on previous projects where we had a bank issue, I know some commissioners had been concerned about the landscaped area adjacent to the house generating runoff. And what I hope to show with this cross section was that the landscaped area and the house area is actually approximately 2 or so feet lower than the top of the bank, so we wouldn't be generating any runoff in the direction of the face of the bank. And we just included that, as a typical section, as kind of the most extreme of the grading, because it happens at the center, pretty much the center line of the house.
Thank you for your question and your response, Mark. Do you have a second question, Seth?
No, I would like to thank Mr. Ritz. I appreciate that explanation.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no, so we'll open this up for public comment.
Okay, can you hear me? This is Graham Goldsmith speaking.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm the next door neighbor just to the south at 86 Pacomo. An architect myself for the last 50 years and done over 100 houses on the island. So my concern when I look at this is, nobody bothered to call me to talk about this in advance. I just happened to see this. We got the notice about the house position here, but what concerns me about it is some of the grade changes they're talking about with retaining walls, 10, 12 feet high, and the foundation depth into that slope. It's a pretty fragile area. They've got this retaining wall right up next to our property that's going to drop water right down onto our site. And I just think it was, is it really necessary to take the guest house and raise that up 12 feet also? This is a really fragile area of the bank. When we did our project next door, the grade was, we did some fill like I expect that. That's fine. I know they have to do something, but I just wonder the extent of these foundations and the grading changes that they're proposing is a little concerning, to say the least, about future erosion of the bank. So there was initially, I think, for the HDC a plan way back when that had the concept that you would arrive at the house on a lower level, come up to the second level, would then be up where they're proposing to put the whole house, so that it kind of tucked into the slope and didn't generate such massive amounts of retaining walls and fill. I just thought that might be a little more stable to try to do it that way. So that's my concern about it. And it is within the 100-foot jurisdiction. I know that it's outside the 50 feet, but it's a pretty tenuous position up there on that slope. That's my feeling.
Thank you. And did you say your last name was Goldsmith?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I
Yeah,
refer.
yeah, thank you. Graham Goldsmith, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Goldsmith. They're definitely important concerns that you have.
Okay.
So I don't know, Mark, did you look into, inserting the house a little bit more into the natural slope of the property?
Well, the majority of the retaining walls and fill that Mr. Goldsmith is discussing are significantly landward of the buffer zone. In terms of loading from the structure for the bank, typically Dan explained this to me since he's the engineer and I'm not, to prep me for the meeting. Typically loads are calculated at a 45-degree angle from the footings. The footings for the proposed house foundation will be at approximately at an elevation of approximately 32 feet. So that if you transfer that load out at a 45-degree angle from that 32-foot height, that load will never intersect the face of the bank. It will be the face of the bank, the top of the bank is at an elevation of about 40 to 42 feet, and is over 70 feet away. So if you do a 45-degree angle from the foundation at 32 feet, it'll go out, it'll be at zero about approximately 32 feet from the house. It'll never load that bank directly. It will be a good ways away from it. And in terms of work outside of jurisdictional areas, again, they're planning to install appropriate drainage and drain to lower parts of the property outside of jurisdiction, closer to the road, to have the walls properly stepped and drained. So all of the water issues outside of jurisdictional areas that will be properly addressed, from an engineering and hydrology standpoint.
Well, the actual slope, you're picking one little spot that happens to stick up a little higher. It's a little bump that sticks up in the middle of that section on the bank. All I'm saying is that this is a pretty steep, there ought to be a cross section that goes through the whole slope for people to understand what's going on here, because it's an enormously steep slope going down. And I understand that you got to do something to address the grade and to do some retainage there. It just concerns me that, you're going to go down. You just said 32 feet is the footing. That's 12 feet below this edge of the bank. That's a pretty deep hole. When you're digging that hole with an excavator, I just hope things don't start moving around, because if that whole bank starts to go, it's not good. And we know what happened just north of there with the old Gamble house. They had to move that house once, and there was a lot of erosion there. So I just, for everybody's sake, I think you ought to look into that and find a way that perhaps we can look at the grading in a more natural way.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Goldsmith. I agree with you. I do think this site is difficult for us because a lot of the house is out of the 50, and a lot of the development, the pool, et cetera, is out of our jurisdiction. So it does make it difficult for us to condition some of those aspects. But we do hear your concerns.
Okay.
Is there any other public comment on 88 Pacomo Road? Or any more thoughts or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. So Jeff, would we have everything we'd need to close this one?
We do have all of the required information.
Okay. Well, if there's no other comments or questions, Mark, would you like to try and close?
Yes, we would.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Guess we don't technically need a second.
You can second, Madam Chair.
Yeah. I know we don't technically need one. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Erisman, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
All right, so that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Nantucket Land Council, Nantucket Harbor, represented by RJ Turcott.
Hi, Chair Ersman. This is RJ Turcott for Nantucket Land Council. Also on with me this evening is Dr. Alyssa Novak. She's in a car, I believe, so hopefully she can hear us. But thrilled to be bringing this project before the commission tonight. This will be our second restoration site after the one off of Monomoy and Second Pier, which we were before you back in August of last year for both an extension request as well as a minor modification for that project. And that project was initially just a physical transplanting project. And the minor modification was for trying to start some pilot seeding methods, which have never been tried on Nantucket. And this second site, which we have selected with the assistance of the Town Natural Resources Department, based on water quality data they've been collecting over the years, will be another site for this seeding project. It'll have 4 different methods we'll be testing, from basically there's 2 methods that are just seed dispersal methods, and then there are 2 methods that are a little more involved, and we'll be working with the Natural Resources Department and using some of their flow-through tanks to take reproductive eelgrass and put it in the flow-through tanks until they drop their seeds, and then take those seeds and try to plant them at this restoration site off of CO2. So with that, I don't know if anyone has any questions. Jeff, I realize, isn't sharing his screen. I'm happy to share my screen if you guys want to look at this.
He's not screen sharing right now, but maybe he can bring it back up. Was everybody able to see the location in the packet? Oh, here it comes.
Okay. So that's a second half-acre site, very similar to the one that was recently before this commission off of Monomoy. It's a half-acre site, roughly parallel to shore. It is at its nearest at mean high water on CO2, about 150 feet from shore, and at its furthest, that near edge is about 175 feet from shore, at a depth of between -3 to -8 feet. So we'll be requesting waivers because all of this work is going to be taking place in land under the ocean, land containing shellfish, and the estimated habitat for rare and significant species for coastal wetlands. And we'll be requesting a waiver from the commission under sections 211B1 and section 208B3 for net benefit.
Thank you, RJ. So at this point, does anybody have any comments or questions? I know I'm excited to see, more and more eelgrass planting projects from you guys and habitat restoration in general. So if there's no questions or comments from commissioners, we'll open it up to the public. I do not see any public comment on YouTube. So Jeff, do we have everything we'd need to close this one?
Give me 1 second to check. I feel like we were still waiting for heritage on this.
Yeah.
Because it's mapped. Sorry, I just was trying to remember. So unfortunately, no, we do not.
Okay. Waiting on heritage. I saw the file number and got excited. So
our money for hope for.
Right. RJ, would you like to continue this one for 2 weeks?
Yes, please. And as a side note, we will be looking for volunteers. I know commissioners in the past have come out and helped us with our Monomoy transplanting project. So if any of you folks would like to join us and either help from shore or on the boats sorting and cleaning eelgrass, or if any of you are dive certified or like to snorkel and want to come out and help out, we'll be looking for volunteers and would love to have you. So with that, I think we will continue to the 10th, if that's possible. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, March 10th. And if you ever need students, we could supply you with students as well.
Well, it's 80 degrees out.
Yeah, that's true. They're not going to take any harsh weather. All right, so that moves us on to amended orders of conditions. We have 28 EPR Trust at 28 Eel Point Road, represented by Mark Ritz.
Good evening once again. Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 28 Eel Point Road. What you have before you this evening is a request for an amendment. We'd like to make a few site modifications to the existing approval. The main one is the addition of a sports court on the western side of the property to be located outside of the 50-foot buffer to an IVW, but pretty much almost entirely inside the 100-foot buffer. The other addition would be a grass and stepping stone walking path from that sports court to the house to be located outside the 25-foot buffer. And then the final change to the plan is a fire pit on the patio. It's not actually a proposed fire pit. The fire pit was previously approved on the other side of the pool. We're just flipping it to the west side of the pool from the east side of the pool. So we just wanted to get that change on the plan as well. And that is the extent of the modifications on this plan.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. So we'll give a quick check and see if the public has any questions or comments. Also looks like not on YouTube. So Jeff, do we have everything we would need to issue the amended order?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Is there a motion to issue the amended order? Motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on. We don't have any RDAs tonight, so that moves us on to minor modifications. We have Ang at 11 Jonathan Way, represented by Jeff Blackwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeff Blackwell for the applicant. I think we're down to the final housekeeping details on this project, which I'm sure you all recall very well. One of the developments that has brought us back to the commission is a composting toilet engineering firm and engineer was hired to sort out the details of implementing this composting toilet system for both structures. And the recommendation was to have one central mechanical room with a vacuum system that will bring the black water or toilet waste to the mechanical room, where there will be one central composting chamber for both structures. And we found the location that is furthest from that we can make it from the wetlands, which is 77 feet or so from the wetland on the north. And that is shown at the northwest corner of the smaller structure. the architect has finished with the HDC permitting for the smaller structure. And as a result of that, the final deck on the west side, again, as far away from the wetland as possible, well beyond the 50-foot minimum, is on the west side of the structure. And there's an outdoor shower on that deck as well. And there are 3 balconies, all of which are well beyond the setback of the main body of the structures. So they vary in setback from 67 to something like 70 feet or more from the wetland. And as I said, they're well beyond the 50-foot minimum and beyond the closest portion of the main part of the structures. So we hope we were in last time to deal with all the lighting matters with Ben Shampoo, and I'm hoping that we have dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's on this project, and that the next time we come in will be for a certificate of compliance.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. This project has from a place where I thought it was never going to get permitted. We've certainly made it a long way.
I was betting the same myself.
Yeah. So Jeff Carlson, do we have everything we would need to issue the minor mod?
Yes, and I will do a count to see if this is the most modified or amended project that we've had at some point. So it's getting close.
Right. Is there a motion to issue the minor mod? Motion made by Linda, seconded by Seth. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Have a good night.
You too. So that moves us on to Killian at 10 Mayhew Lane, represented by Brian Madden.
Thank you very much. Brian Madden, representing the applicant. The proposed minor modification involves some minor updates to the configuration of the pool that was originally approved. The pool equipment has been relocated to an area immediately west of the previously approved shed, outside the 50-foot buffer zone. The patio and around the pool has been elevated a little bit as well to increase separation to groundwater. If you remember, this pool was designed to maintain that 2-foot separation. And then the last bit of minor update is the proposed restoration area of the buffer zone was slightly expanded on the west side. Originally, it was encompassing the IVW and the 25-foot buffer zone, and it's proposed to be expanded out to the west. So it fully revegetating all vegetation within that area to remove the invasives and replace with natives.
Thank you.
That's about it.
Thanks. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to issue the minor mod?
Yes, this is another project contending for most modifications now too.
This is only the second.
All right, is there a motion to issue the minor mod?
So moved.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Seth. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So we don't have any certificates of compliance tonight. So that will move us on to orders of conditions. I know Jeff emailed some out earlier. So we have Nantucket Longevity Trust at 52 Monomoy Road.
So I don't want to sound contrarian, and we can certainly change it a little bit. I have some interesting findings on this one because the waivers that were requested, wanted to discuss a little bit whether or not we wanted to make a finding to make a waiver non-applicable, or if we would rather grant the waiver. So the first waiver that was being requested was for work relative to the buffer zone. And I believe, and if you guys agree, that this is clearly a water dependent project, so those buffer zones don't apply, because I think pretty clearly that this activity can't happen in an area that's not the resource area, because it's the whole purpose is to restore the resource area. So I included this finding number 3, that just finding that the project is water dependent, so that kind of scratches the need for the waiver from the 25-foot undisturbed buffer zone for that. And then the second one, number 4, I kind of wrestled with it a little bit because they're not altering the existing vegetation because there is none. So I'm game to put the waiver in for it, but I think it's almost easier to just have a finding that says they're not altering the existing vegetation because they've simply documented that they're restoring an area that has no vegetation. So this doesn't come up very often. So if anyone has anything else they'd like to say to that, I'm game either way. But this way we're not having to grant waivers for this.
So Seth, I'll go to you and then Maureen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I tend to agree with what Jeff is saying. I think the requirement anyways is not whether they're altering the specific vegetation, but whether they're altering the vegetation type. And, there is salt marsh on either side of that they're restoring. So just there is evidence that there was salt marsh there before. It just is currently not there. There's nothing there, but there had been salt marsh. So I don't think they're altering the vegetation type. They're restoring salt marsh that was there. And I totally agree that this is water dependent project given the type of resource area we're talking about. Salt marsh, the plants are wet all the time. They're saltwater tolerant species. They're talking about planting plants that are going to be in the water. So I think it's water dependent.
Thank you, Seth. Maureen?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I also agree on the fact this is a clearly water dependent, but it's the use of the word alter, and I know it's 7 o'clock, but to me, alter just means change, and so they're changing what's there. I mean, I know they're adding something that used to be there, and it should be there, but it's still a change. So I would lean that way, but if nobody else thinks that's what we should do, I'm fine with it going the way Jeff suggested. But I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Maureen. Jeff?
I think if it helps, I'll just read the standard really quickly, just for the purpose of that. It says, no proposed project in a salt marsh or lands within 100 feet of a salt marsh shall destroy any portion of the salt marsh, change species composition of the marsh, have any adverse effect on salt marsh productivity, pollute the salt marsh, or adversely affect water quality. So I think maybe I would suggest changing that finding to say, instead, the commission finds that the project as proposed will not change the species composition of the marsh. And I think that fixes it.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I was saying. It's the vegetation community, not the vegetation itself.
Yeah.
Hard to change something that's actually not there to change.
Yeah. To me, I think it was kind of one of those things where I try to puzzle out not doing a waiver for this because I want to feel like projects like this are less daunting and less difficult to put together. So if someone else wants to do it, they're not having to craft waiver requests or do things. They can simply apply and do it and have a positive permit. And hopefully an easier permitting experience when it's something that's this clearly straightforward.
Thank you, Jeff, for facilitating that. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand this is a pilot project that, it's harder to know how effective it will be, but I have good faith in it. And I'm wondering what commissioners' thoughts are on adding a survivability condition here. So if the Spartina that's not surviving, would they be required to plant more Spartina, or are they just gonna come back and say, it's not working, we need to try something else?
That's a great question, Seth. I think it would probably be good to have some survivability just for reporting back to us. I mean, I know they're providing a yearly report, but having that component in there would probably be a good one. Mark?
I don't want to make it onerous though. If it flops, it flops. I hope that it won't. But if it fails, I hate to have them sort of under the threat of survivability.
Yeah, I don't know that, from my perspective, I don't know that it would be under the threat of survivability, but just that that's a component that they would report out on. To maybe
reporting is good.
Plan. But Seth may have, a different thought because it's his statement. So go ahead, Seth.
No, I think that's fine. I think we would just say something like if the survivorship of Spartina alterniflora falls under a specific percentage that we would determine what that is, the project representative should make a report to the commission with the update on the progress and any planned activities to move forward.
Jeff?
So I have a quick suggestion to amend condition 19. I just changed it around a little bit. So now I put it to say, the applicant shall present a yearly report, including photographs, demonstrating the condition and survivorship of the replanted area and the existing vegetated areas. Should the commission determine that additional plantings are necessary, they will be authorized based on this discussion.
I think that's good.
So it doesn't obligate that way. If it's 88% and was supposed to be 90 and it's going really well, you guys aren't hemmed in. I think it's that way if it comes back and the conversation with the applicant says it's not working, then we can try to address it differently. Or if it seems to be working, we can let it go forward and just repeat that going forward.
Thank you, Jeff. And Mr. Leinbach, I see your hand up, but even though your hearing's closed, if you have a procedural question, I'd love to let you ask that.
Yeah, I guess my procedural question is I think you kind of addressed it, is if, 25% dies off the first year, do we have to go through a whole new application to try and plant a little bit more to beef it back up again?
To keep trying.
Nope, it would still fall under this same application until you get a certificate of compliance. So you wouldn't have to renotice or anything like that.
Okay, great. Because we're very happy to take pictures and supply them, on a yearly basis, and hopefully there's more survival than die off. But you never know what every storm cycle year is different, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yes, that is true. And again, we so appreciate you guys making the effort to restore the salt marsh habitat.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for answering my question. I won't take up any more of your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So any other thoughts on the order? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve as amended? Mark, are you making that motion?
A second.
Second to Linda. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Nantucket Yacht Club Incorporated at 1 South Beach Street. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if we need to include any conditions about siltation, booms, or other types of preventative requirements so that none of the construction materials are getting into the harbor.
Thank you, Seth. That's a good point. Any other thoughts on this order? See you typing away, Jeff.
Just got to learn how to type faster. So to kind of capitalize that, Seth, I think I would suggest 19, that the applicant shall contain the work area as to prevent materials from entering the harbor and to minimize turbidity.
I think that's good.
I'll move to approve as amended.
Second.
Seconded to Linda. So by roll vote, Beal,
I abstain.
oh, right, I forgot already. Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, so that carries with Commissioner Beal abstained. And that moves us on to 88 Pacomo LLC at 88 Pacomo Road.
All right, so on this one, I just had the finding that the building department and zoning like us to include where we just document the aspects of the project that are outside of jurisdiction, but that way they at least know that those were reviewed just in case. I include our normal provision for fill. Doesn't look like there's going to be lots there, but I've been trying to just put it as a standard. And then I included the condition that our regulations requires that simply just calls out that no coastal engineering structure will be permitted to protect this project in the future.
Thank you, Jeff. And I'm just wondering, I know in some projects we had started to include the condition that if they, like if the structure moves into jurisdiction, it would bring them back in front of us.
Yeah, we could put a 21. Should any part of the structure,
or should I say enter jurisdiction, enter the 50. Seth?
Thank you. Yeah, if we're already doing amendments as well, we need a apostrophe in commissions and additional findings number 2.
all right, so condition 21, should any part of the structure and to the 50-foot setback, the applicant shall come before the commission to discuss the management of the site, including the potential retreat of the structure.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you, Jeff.
No problem. I might have to remember that one. I actually kind of like how I wrote that. So
Sure to save it. Any other thoughts on this one, or would somebody like to make a motion to approve as amended? Mark? You making that motion?
I am.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Linda. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to extension of orders. We have Rabiel at 141 Cliff Road. And we have Paul Santos on for this one.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. Paul Santos for Nantucket Surveyors. This is 141 Cliff. This is an extension of the order for the Wilkinson Array. As you remember, we came in last month and withdrew the application to do an upgrade to it. This is to keep the order extended so we could just continue our general maintenance on the existing array.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? And I'm forgetting, Paul, are you looking for 3 1-years?
I believe that's what we asked for, yes.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to extend the project for 3 1-year extensions?
I'll make that motion.
All right, a motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to 36 Lilly Street LLC at 36 Lilly Street. And we have Brian Madden on for this one.
I have to recuse from this one.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
Thank you very much. So the applicant is trying to rejoin. He went through a bad cell reception area, but can't rejoin the Zoom. While he tries to reconnect, do we just want Sankaty to go ahead of us?
Yes, I guess we could have Sankaty go first. So we will skip 36 Lilly and go back to it, and we will hear Sankaty Head Golf Club Incorporated at 8 and 18 Hoyks Hollow Road. And I'm not sure who wants to present this one. Kevin Dale?
Madam Chair, it's good to see you from afar.
Yes.
And I want to also say hello to my friend Mark Beal, whom I haven't seen for a long time. This is a request that the commission extend an existing order of conditions for an erosion control project at the Sankaty Head Beach Club. And the order was issued about 2.5 years ago. To be blunt, the club is struggling to determine the future of the beach club, whether to keep it where it is or to relocate it away from the bluff. And there are many moving parts. The Board of Trustees is meeting on the 10th of March for an entire day to discuss this. So what the golf club would like or would prefer is to continue or extend the order of conditions for 3 years and see what comes up.
Thank you. I guess I have a question for Jeff about this one. Jeff, because I think the conditions have changed out there so much, does that require anything else? I mean, I know we're extending the order, but I feel like it's almost a little bit different of a procedure that they would need out there given the erosion. So I just don't know how that falls into everything.
Yeah, we looked into that a little bit and tried to reconcile that a little bit. And I even spoke with some other counterparts about how they've dealt with this before. And we've kind of found out through policy, like how DEP deals with these, if the permit's still valid and it's eligible for extension, unless it's something so drastic that it completely, if the resource area, changed from a coastal bank to a coastal beach or coastal dune, that level of change, but the retreat of the bank doesn't necessarily trigger that level of review from them. So that's kind of the policy that we've kept. So I think it would still be eligible for the extension due to that fact and the fact that they've started some of the work in the degree that part of the work that was also included was pickup of debris and things that were coming out. So they qualify under that. So I think we still feel pretty comfortable that they'd be eligible for the extension under the current regulations.
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure if they'd need like some minor mod component or something moving forward, but it doesn't sound like it. Seth?
I guess it's on the same vein, but to Jeff, so you feel that the project as it currently stands is in compliance with their order of conditions?
Yeah, the bulk of the project hasn't really begun. So it's not out of compliance. It just hasn't started. The part of the project that's been started was the requirement for any new cleanup that's there. And that has been going on. And the beach club has been pretty active in picking up any things that's come out of the bank, whether it's fence posts or bricks or those. I know they are in fairly regular contact that they're trying to keep that off the beach as much as possible.
Thank you, Jeff. Seth?
Yeah, with that, I would make a motion to issue the 3 1-year extensions.
Second.
Seconded by Linda. So by roll vote, Beal.
I'll abstain.
Okay. Engelborg,
Aye.
Erisman, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, so that carries with Commissioner Beal abstained.
Thank you,
In
Madam
regards to
Chair.
you,
Thank you,
Kevin.
Commissioners.
Thank you. So that will bring us back to 36 Lilly Street LLC at 36 Lilly Street.
Thank you very much, Brian Madden. And I think the applicant is still having some difficulty rejoining. I don't know if Jeff, anything on your end is popping up to let him in. Okay. All right, we'll proceed forward. So we're asking for a 3-year extension request to this project. If you remember, construction had originally began in November 2019 with the demolition of the structures on site and some site prep work, foundation excavation commencement. That was initially put on pause as the land bank expressed some interest in acquiring the land. And then COVID hit, which put it on a longer track delay. The land bank ultimately acquired 36 Lilly in February 2021. And then following HCC review, we came back before this commission in August 2021 for a minor modification change for a much scaled back reduced project. And since that time, the applicant has tried to get on the contractor's schedule to SCANA and was unable to do until materials were obtained. And due to supply chain issues, there was some delays, I think, as we all have heard, until December of 2021. And now we've been placed on to SCANA's schedule to commence next week. So we are asking for a 3-year extension. However, confident that it will be completed before then. So I'll turn over to questions.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks, Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know when we last heard this, or maybe 2 times ago, there had been some issues with the site, like the foundation being left open, some wildlife issues. Have all of those been ameliorated at this point?
Yeah, the foundation had been filled in some time ago, and we had met out there with staff, land bank, and DPW in December 2020 and discussed next steps, which led to the land bank's ultimate acquisition and the major project changes. And there was also discussion of affording room for drainage setback within the southern portion of the lot for the town to, if and when they update that drain line to accommodate that. So the redesign did incorporate that. And since we were last before you, there hasn't been any activity on the lot since August.
Thank you, Brian and Seth, for your question. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? I know we had one letter, Brian, about resurveying some aspects of this property or redelineating. Is that something you guys would consider given some of the hydrology on the site?
No.
You know, I've been out to the site many, many times and have had discussions with staff on that end. Personally, I don't see any changes to the wetland boundaries. We've always acknowledged the extent of land subject to flooding on portions of the site of the combined sites. Again, this is a much reduced project footprint. And there was some, I did see the comments, and there was some discussion about the wetland north of Gull Island Road at the corner of Westchester. And, you know, the property is located approximately 50 feet away from that wetland itself. And there's a big ridge being the Gull Island roadway driveway that separates the site from that particular wetland.
Thank you, Brian. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, looks like no. I will open this up for public comment, but I do want to make sure that we stay focused to the extension and not things that have maybe happened in the past that have been resolved. So do any members of the public wish to speak? Mark F., and if you could just state your last name for us.
Sure, it's Mark Forsyth. I'm a butter at 8 Gull Island Lane. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. So I was reviewing with our neighbors the Mass Wetlands Protection Act, and this development still will impact, as it's proposed, you know, multiple aspects of that act within the resource area. Specifically to the south, you know, I have firsthand account because I live here full time. And so we see what's going on in the resource area. And it's a dynamic ecosystem, to say the least. You've got freshwater movement over the property that goes into the storm drain, which goes through the watershed, eventually into the harbor. You've got groundwater now that hadn't been there before, but it's sitting on the surface. It has been all winter. I know it's been a wet winter, but even in the drier times, there's water right below the surface. And then to the northeast, where the proposed studio is to be placed, that is correct. That is certainly within the 50-foot buffer of the Gull Island wetlands, which we, when we did a small addition, had to address. And our Sarah McLean, our neighbor, also had to get a wetlands designation. So it's there. So whether or not there's a lane in the way, above the lane that Brian said is a kind of a natural adherent to that wetland, is the former the Merkland property, which is the former Gardner, Captain Gardner's house. And all of that water from that hill, the groundwater, comes down, you know, into this proposed development. So as a neighbor and as an abutter, you know, there's a lot of issues that still remain. And so we would ask the board to deny the extension, or at least take a fresh look at the designation of the wetlands, because it has shifted. As I said before, this is a dynamic ecosystem. There's plans to restore Lilly Pond that the land bank has, and that has to be considered in how this development will impact that. So I think this proposal has been in front of you since 2017. So it's been a long time. And so we would just ask the board to take that consideration and kind of say enough is enough. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sarah McLean.
Hi, I guess I just have a question. I would reiterate everything that Mark said. I actually own the house at 6 Gull Island Lane and am well aware of all the water in that area. But in looking at their original, what was presented back in 2017, there were a number of conditions here that I'm looking at. And I'm just wondering if those ongoing general conditions were met in terms of providing photographs to you on a regular basis if there was standing water, which we know there's been a lot of. And then also, I guess anything else that you had requested when you did this in 2017. It looks like this date was November 29th of 2017. I know most of the time it's for 3 years. There was an extension given because of COVID. So now it's, 5 years. And I would also ask that you at least relook at and sort of go back and request that they look at the conditions existing right now, and then also the conditions that you required them to maintain while they had this permit in place. Thank you.
Thank you. I know some of the monitoring components wouldn't trigger until the project is more underway. But that's a good question for Jeff, I guess, because I don't have the order right in front of me on my small screen.
If you take some more, I'll try to pull some of that stuff together. I have some on my computer. I just need to get it up. I wasn't sure what questions we would get, so I'll mine that out pretty quickly. But Brian may have some comments too.
Thank you, Jeff. Brian?
Yeah, just to provide some commentary on some of those original conditions. So a lot of that was based around some of the restoration work that was proposed initially, along with the compensatory storage area that was part of the larger combined project. But certainly any ongoing requirements, conditions for monitoring, reporting to commission staff with photographs can certainly be handled moving forward.
Thank you, Brian.
Hi, I'm a neighbor as well.
Hi, can you just state your name for us for the record?
Abigail Camp. I just want to say that the site, I live across the street and I walk through there just about every day. Every day the site is pretty wet, except for where they've built up a drive so they can drive on there with a combination of asphalt, tar. I'm not really sure what the material is, but I'm worried that, further development of this property will disperse the water elsewhere. And I'm worried about polluting the Lilly Pond further. It's already a little bit murky, and thankfully Land Bank will be doing its part to clean it up. But it's a very fragile site, and I would strongly urge you to take a second look at the site and see if it's even buildable. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? RJ?
Chairman RJ Turcotte on behalf of the Nantucket Land Council. Just like to point out that before this work has commenced, the commission's well within their right to request an updated wetlands delineation to make sure nothing has changed since 2017. Thank you.
Thank you, RJ. And Seth, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, if there's other public comment first, I'll cede, but if not,
Nobody else has raised their hand, so I think you're good to go.
all right, thank you, Madam Chair. Under the Nantucket wetlands regulations, there are very specific requirements for when and when not we can deny a request for an extension. It's in page 16 of the regulations. Well, as the Wetlands Protection Act also has its own regulations, but it says commission shall not deny a request for an extension unless it finds one of the following things. A, no work has begun. That's not applicable here. B, C, and D. B is new information not available at the time the permit was issued, potentially relevant if the wetland delineation has changed. C is incomplete work is causing damage to the interest. D is work has been done in the violation of the bylaw. So B, C, and D, I guess, are up for debate. And then E is the extension request is not timely. The extension request shall be timely if received by the commission a minimum of 30 days prior to the expiration of the permit. And I do want to point out that we received the letter from LEC on February 18th, indicating that this order of conditions with the told time under the COVID-19 order is valid until March 6th. So that's not 30 days by my understanding.
Thank you, Seth. I agree with you there. That's definitely not meeting the 30 days. And I do question B and C, whether they would fall under those reasonings as well. So thank you for being so thorough and reading those to us. Seth?
Yeah, thank you. And I think some of this is, again, up for discussion and consideration, and we can look to Jeff for more information perhaps, but I do think E definitely wasn't fulfilled, and we do need to take that under consideration.
Yes, thank you, Seth. Brian?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. We had been in touch with staff 30 days in advance and were recommended to provide a summary letter of what has transpired and what took place. So, with the apologies that wasn't submitted earlier, but basically, we submitted it after we spoke with staff and assembled the materials that were requested.
Thank you, Brian. I do worry we've backed up on like a few deadlines with this one, even though the first one was told. It is, even if you were speaking to staff, it does seem like this was pretty close.
There have been a lot of very unique extenuating circumstances that have delayed the work continuing on this one.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sarah Alger, I represent the applicant, and since he's unable to get back in, I just wanted to say a couple of things that I think he would probably say if he were able to get back on. I don't know what's going on with that, but anyway, the applicant has been working in good faith with the land bank over the last year, and part of the reason that they didn't start work was after the land bank closed on the portion of the project that they did acquire, they came back and entered into negotiations with the applicant to purchase the remaining property. So at that point, the applicant stopped work, called off Toscana, and in good faith attempted to reach an agreement with the land bank for the entire property to be purchased. When that fell apart, they had to go back to Toscana and get everything back and up and operating. And just given everything with COVID and supply chain issues and just the sheer volume of work that's going, the work couldn't start until next week. So I think Brian's accurate that there have been a lot of odd and extenuating circumstances with this particular project. I think it would be unusual for the commission to deny an extension request. Even if you wanted to do, you don't have to do the full 3 years, of course, you could do something less than that. But I think in fairness, the applicant should be given an opportunity to complete the work that was commenced and get this project done.
Thank you, Sarah. Seth, I thought I saw your hand go back up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I do understand that there's been several extenuating circumstances on this site. I know what the regulations say, and I know what the reality is sometimes. I think it is important to, make sure that we're following the regulations, since that's our jurisdictional duty. And without trying to overcome your authority, Madam Chair, I would be interested in seeing what other commissioners thought about B, C, or D of that request for extension component of the regulations.
Thank you, Seth. I was going to try and circle back to that, but we got off track a little bit. So I'm not sure, Maureen or Mark, what you feel about the extension request and some of the triggers that would not allow us to order an extension. Excuse me. Maureen?
B, if I remember correctly from just a couple of minutes ago, is if there'd been a change in or change of circumstances about the wetland delineation, is that what or can you just remind me of what B, C, and D are? But I think B was something about the wetlands delineation, and I apologize, I don't remember.
I have it up, but this is on page 16 of the wetlands regulations. If anyone wants to get it from the Nantucket Conservation Commission site, it's on the homepage there. B says, new information not available at the time the permit was issued indicates that the permit is not adequate to protect the interests identified in the bylaw. C says, incomplete work is causing damage to the interests identified in the bylaw. And D says, work has been done in violation of the bylaw, these regulations, or conditions in the permit. And then E again is the extension request is not timely. And I do think by extension request, it means a formal request, but I take Mr. Madden's point.
Thank you, Seth. I have trouble navigating extra things on this small screen, so I appreciate when you can bring them up.
So thank you, excuse me, shall I go on, Madam
Yes,
Chair?
Maureen.
Okay, and thank you, Seth. I do think that B, this is obviously a very, very complicated situation and with lots of extenuating circumstances. And but I do believe that given the information that we have know now, and I believe that B would apply, and there is new information indicating that the permit is not adequate now, given the changed circumstances, and that to permit a year's extension, I think it's premature to do that. And so I think that I would feel comfortable relying upon B. C is more questionable because of all the change up because of COVID and everything else. But D also is, I know if you had, one could argue that you had actual notice, the commission had the actual notice because Brian and Jeff had been speaking about this. And so that might not be if you will, a full and complete violation, but I do think that B would apply. So I would say not to issue it. And I'm not sure then. So if we refuse to issue the extension today, then the applicant would have to come back with a new NOI. Is that, or I guess I'm not sure where does this leave the applicant then if we deny the extension today?
That's a good question for Jeff. I know also, I'm just wondering if, we triggered B, wouldn't that just require us, or couldn't it require them to just do a new delineation to provide the information in the interim? I'm just not sure how that fits together. Brian?
Yeah, thank you. Before Jeff speaks, I just, for point of clarification, so B is specific to new information not available at the time the permit was issued, indicates that the permit is not adequate to protect the interests identified in the bylaw. I'm just unclear on what new information has been submitted beyond hearsay with no substance or information proof behind it that would run afoul of the conditions that were assigned to the permit.
Thank you, Brian. I know, and we don't have anything tonight, but in the past, some of the photographs and things of the site have been disturbing a little bit in its management. And I know that these are things in the past, but I think it does raise question about, where this project stands and if it does need a new delineation, if that, was true to what people are seeing on the ground and the more kind of excess water flow that seems to be there, I think does raise concern. But no, we haven't had somebody going on the site to ground truth that, because it's not their property, so then it becomes difficult there. Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, yeah, just a quick follow-up too. So, I mean, I've been down there periodically. I haven't seen any significant adverse flooding in a while. I'll defer to the abutters who are obviously down there more often than I. But I think a lot of the past questions, concerns, and issues really stemmed on what was going on with that wetland at the corner of Westchester and Gull Island. But once the DPW cleaned out those pipes, it had drained within a 48-hour period. And since then, I don't believe I've seen standing water in that basin for longer than 24 hours. And I think that was the large culprit that we were unfairly getting blamed for on this property. And I think that's functioning much more efficiently now. And I just wanted to reiterate those points. I know we had discussed it in the past, but just to restate that.
Madam Chair, could I also add just a couple of things?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind the commission, because I don't think that we've talked about this today, that the applicant was asked by the town to delay the project so that they could survey and redesign the storm drain system. And they did eventually do the survey, but never finished the redesign. They didn't approve the new design until August. We couldn't build on the old design because we'd sold the project. So once we got the go-ahead in August, we had to order all the materials, and that is what has been the holdup getting it going since August. Those are now in and we're able to start. So I think it would be unfair to the applicant, who's really in good faith worked not only with the land bank, but also with the town, and has attempted to work with the neighbors. Part of the water issue that's happening down there is the drains that come from adjacent property without benefit of any permit, one via a downspout and two via a sump pump running into the storm drain without benefit of easement or any permitting. So I think, in fairness to the applicant, who really they haven't been sitting on this. They've been attempting to work cooperatively with the town, with the neighbors, with the land bank. I think it would be unfair and actually not within the regulations for you to require additional information or new filing prior to granting this extension, even if it's not the full 3 years it's been requested.
Thank you. Mr. Forsyth and Ms. McLean, I see your hands back up. I'll let you speak. I want to avoid back and forth with the applicant though, so please try and state new information that you haven't already stated tonight.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just real quickly, I think number one of the page 16 reasons why you cannot request them, there has been no work. And I'm just kind of hearing just a lot of excuses of why that hasn't been, but the fact remains there has been no work done on the location for quite some time. And the last time this application was in front of you, the request to extend was approved because of the COVID loophole. So we just feel as, you know, in all due respect, Councilor Alger, the blue flag has not been good neighbors. So, and that's just firsthand account. So I just would take that all in advisement. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McLean?
Yes, thank you. So two things. We have in the past provided extensive documentation and pictures, and I don't want to rehash that because you have it fully documented in the past in terms of pictures and site and standing water and dead animals, and we all had to live with it for a very long time. I will speak specifically to the Gull Island wetlands area. I personally, at my expense and with the help of DPW, replaced the pipe that ran from underneath Gull Island to the outtake, which connects to ultimately the harbor. And DPW required me to increase the size from a 12-inch to a 24-inch, which, yes, it as it was cleaned out previous, and then as the pipe was expanded, it has mitigated all of the wetlands of Gull Island. That had no bearing on the site in question from the standpoint of after that was done, which was over a year ago now, there's still been standing water on a regular basis on the 36B site. So I would argue that presentation of Brian, and maybe he wasn't aware that pipe had been replaced and the capacity was increased, but that doesn't seem to have affected the standing water that's been on that site on a regular basis over the past year. Thank you.
Thank you. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in response to Mr. Forsyth, I think there's an important clarification that needs to happen for the record. So this commission never issued a extension of this permit. The applicant at that time actually asked to withdraw their extension because it was going to be automatically told by the COVID-19 regulations and automatically extend based on the state law, but we never issued an extension.
Thank you for clarifying that, Seth. Mark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want a clarification on the 30-day notice issue. I'm not clear on what happened with that.
Thank you, Mark. I don't know. That's a good question for Jeff.
So I guess I'll just lay out the timeline for how this took place. So we have been contacted by the applicant about filing for the extension and what we at staff level felt would be required to properly document the conditions on the site and work going forward, given the nature of the site. And we started those conversations kind of in shortly after the new year and in, early to mid-January. We had asked pretty specifically for an update and a timeline on construction, as we knew it was tight to time. And I think that's where the letter specifically speaking to Toscana scheduling came in. And the formal application came in the early part of February that everyone has called out pretty clearly here. The 30 days, it's also something too where, kind of for better or for worse, and thinking a little bit broader and outside of the extension request here, is something that the commission has, whether formally or informally, acted on extension requests filed inside that time limit, has not, while not abundantly common, is also not uncommon. I mean, it's definitely happened. We've had extension requests that get filed, honestly, days before the permit goes through, and given the conditions on the site and the discussion in place is something that's brought forward. DEP has even issued guidance to us before that if the request is filed and the commission hasn't taken it up on the agenda and it expires in the interim, if the filing of the application predates the expiration, they encourage, working with applicants to issue those extensions out for that fact. So I think we should be really careful if that's going to be the grounds that people want to base it on, because I think there's a lot of problems with that myself. I think there's a lot of history of that not necessarily being followed to the letter. I think that could be problematic.
Thank you, Jeff. Seth?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Jeff for that explanation. I do think that, with all respect, the regulations in, part 2 of the extension of permits say all requests for an extension shall be in writing. And then there's the part about it should be at least 30 days in advance. If that hasn't been the history, then I'll defer to you because you've been involved a lot longer than I have. But we definitely need to clean that up in the future, or possibly starting now, to make sure that our actions are, we're acting in accordance with the regulations that give us authority. I mean, I think we need to act as the regulations say. I appreciate the history, but we need to do better about that.
Thank you, Seth. RJ, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Irrespective of the 30-day rule, this is clearly a dynamic area and a controversial one, this resource area, and it would be best for the resource area for the commission to at least request a new delineation before granting an extension, just to be certain before anything else proceeds, that this isn't going to harm the resource area in the years that have gone by since the last delineation. Thank you.
Thank you, RJ. I would kind of have to agree, and I don't know what Jeff feels about this. I think we should have a site visit out there at this point, just because there are a lot of questions coming up from abutters, and it has been a while since we've been on that site. And I do think since it's been, almost 5 years, it would be wise to think about a new delineation as well, because aspects of the project have kind of shifted, and you do have kind of that new driveway that's been going down as the construction access, and how has that changed water flow in this time period. I want to try and allow you guys to work towards your extension, but also try and get some of these important resource area questions answered, because there has been such a delay. Obviously lots of different circumstances caused it, but I do think it's important that we check into them. Mark, I saw your hand up, and then Maureen.
Yes, thank you. Is there any requirement that we issue a specified time limit for is our minimum 1 year extension, or can we do less?
I think it's 1 year, but that's a
I
good
believe
question.
the minimum is 1 year.
And so what's our current time crunch right now?
Well, the permit expires in the first week of March.
So we're backing up to it.
I would say, given DEP's guidance, it's filed and it's being heard. So that gives a little bit of leeway for that, but I wouldn't mess with it too much.
If we don't act on it, what happens? Is it automatically granted?
I think so, after.
I'd have to look into that to be sure. If you don't act on it, I would assume so.
Yeah, I believe it probably is.
Yep.
Maureen?
Yes, thank you. Listening to everything, I think that I was Ms. McLean's actions and working with the DPW and putting in that new pipe. I'm not sure whether that's certainly a change that's documentable, and I don't know how much that has been taken into account, and I don't know whether we is that new information that could impact whether this is it the kind of new information which would indicate that the currently issued permit is not adequate, given what she said about the fact that this pipe, the new pipe that she put in, was very efficacious, but even after that was done, there was still standing water. And I know we have, this, but we do have photographs. I guess what I'm struggling with, I feel like we have, from everything everyone said tonight, I think we have sufficient info to not extend the permit at this point, and also the late notice thing. I've really been chewing on that. It does say written. It does say, I used to be a lawyer, and, the fact that things aren't always enforced properly doesn't mean that they no longer have force in this case. And yes, we can change our procedures so we do it better. But, to say that we would essentially not follow that regulation and allow, this late notice, I have a problem with that. So as I've been thinking about this, I start thinking again about that the late notice is in fact late, and that's what we need to do. But at the same, I don't think we need to cut off the applicant at the knees either. And what I don't know is is there a way for us to ask for a new delineation, and also have, if we, excuse me, any other information that's, photographs, other things that both the applicant and the neighbors might have that would be maybe filed already. It's such a complicated case, so I don't even know what it is we have in the record. And I didn't spend any time this week looking at that. I just feel like we're being kind of crunched by this deadline and by the fact that Toscana can finally do it. And I feel like if Toscana weren't ready, that that this wouldn't be getting pushed, that we could, no, I'm sorry. Let's see, now it's 8:00. Let me just wind that back. I don't want to be influenced by the fact that Toscana can finally do the work. And so I think we've got enough here to say that we don't allow the extension. But is there a way for us, Jeff, to say, pending something? I mean, I just don't know where our leeway is, because I would like to, have another delineation of the wetland. I think that would be very important to do, given the changes, and at least get that done before we make a decision about an extension. I'm just not sure how we do that, given where we are in the rules and the dates. I'm sorry for not being as coherent as I would like to be.
That's all right, Maureen. I think, we could technically continue this and ask for that information would be my feeling. But Jeff, do you have any information about that?
Yeah, I mean, the permit's still valid. So, if Toscana was going out tomorrow, they're still well within their right to do it. The permit doesn't expire for another couple weeks. So it's still valid and in full effect. I mean, I think looking at the delineation is one thing, just due to the fact that while I appreciate photos and things have been submitted, we're really dealing with kind of two separate resource areas here, right? We have the bordering vegetated wetland, and we have the land subject to the isolated land subject to flooding is part of it as well. So that's more of an exercise in topography and a few other aspects. I think something that's important to also keep in mind with looking at that resource area specifically is there's also a substantial amount of impervious area that has permanently left the original permitted lot too, right? So the impacts have kind of a mixed bag in the current state that we're in, right? So a lot of structural area left with the original structure. There's some additional structures that are there that's on the new lot, on the 36B lot that's left. So there's been substantial changes, right? And I think we can all recognize that. As far as looking at the bordering vegetated wetland that's there, I mean, we would have to look at and be able to clearly document a significant change in hydric soil conditions on that site. And I think given the time frame that we're dealing with, that's going to be really difficult to do, right? Hydric soils, while they can form relatively quickly, don't hold and stabilize for a period of time. And I'm not saying that we're not going to find it and it's not a worthwhile exercise, but I don't think people should set their expectations that that bordering vegetated wetland is going to substantially change to the point where we're dealing with applying different setbacks to that lot that are substantially different. I mean, I don't think you can anticipate a 10-foot change or a 5-foot change. And while I appreciate the wetland on Gull Island is different, right, is all the reports that we get back from the wet area on Gull Island is after the pipes change that the area has stayed dry. So there's lots of moving parts here on kind of all sides. And we're left with a project that has been started. I mean, there is a way that gets down there. That foundation's been excavated once and refilled. And, there's definitely been some issues. And, admittedly from all sides, whether it's from the town and from our office and from the applicant, there have been issues through it all and through the time. But I'm not sure that it's in the best interest of the commission to try to go down the path. There's not been enforcement actions issued against the project or issued for violations. We just issued an extension for 141 Cliff Road that shockingly are the exact same dates for the issuance of their original order of conditions with this one, and none of these questions came up. And I appreciate abutter concerns. I really do. And I know this site is super difficult, but it's also something that, you know, while I agree we can do a better job with that, the 30 days and following to the letter of the law, you know, we really need to also be sure that we're trying to be consistent and fair too. And I'm happy to go out with Brian and look at delineations and do those things. But I also think that, you know, there's a point where the commission is in the business of working with applicants to provide projects that protect the interests, not in, you know, a punitive way. And I really appreciate what Maureen said about not cutting someone off at the knees, because we haven't received, and I understand people can't access sites that aren't theirs, right? There's no new soils information that the bordering vegetated wetland delineation has changed because of soils. There's photographs that, you know, there's standing water in areas that there may not have been before. Dealing with that, does that change the delineation for isolated land subject to flooding? Maybe. Does the project impact the performance standards differently if that delineation has changed slightly? I think that's a little different analysis to be done, but I'm not sure that this application type is the best way to do that. I mean, we're still, the commission wouldn't be giving up any, you know, rights to enforcement or issues for anything going forward. But I think we're creating a more difficult situation for the commission with some of this than we probably need to. I mean, again, I'm happy and work at your direction, so I'm happy to go look at these things, and you know the applicant may have some things to add regards to that, but I'm not sure we're going to see it. And I think interestingly enough too, you know, when we look at the Gull Island wetland in particular, even if that setback comes across the way, right, and we look at the permits that are there, there's a way that's outside of the applicant's control that separates it from the resource area, which may make it eligible for waivers under 1.03 F3B for it too. So, right, it's not simple, right? And I think that's the point, but I do think it's something where, you know, I think the applicant came to request an extension in good faith after a lot of different efforts. I think everyone's been putting a lot of effort into it. I think steps can be taken to review delineation, certainly. But I'm not sure that the end result is going to be substantially different. So I want the commission to make a decision that's sound and based and defendable. If, you know, an applicant feels like they're aggrieved and they have the ability to challenge a decision that's not favorable, that the commission's in the best position to defend that decision. And I think this one's especially difficult in that at this point.
Thank you, Jeff. You made some really great points, and I had already kind of considered what would happen when this went to court ultimately and how that would go. So I appreciate that perspective. Brian, I'm going to let Mark speak and then I'll go to you. So Mark.
Thank you, Ashley. On an emotional or personal or logical standpoint, from my point of view, if they couldn't get the job done in 5 years, we ought to kill the application. But then I read the bylaw, extension of permits. The commission shall not deny a request for an extension unless it finds by a preponderance of evidence one of the following. And I, in good conscience, can't find A, B, C, D, or E a preponderance. So they're arguable for sure, but I don't want to go to court. We had enough of that already with other cases. And I just don't see how we can do it. As I said, 5 years should be long enough, but we just, the COVID extension, which we had no say in, gave them an extra, I think, 18 months almost. We were ready to kill it 18 months ago, but then we couldn't because they were in violation, I thought, but they solved that problem. So I sort of, that's where I am, Madam Chair. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Mark. Seth, and then I'll go to you, Brian. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jeff, for some more information about the timing. I do think that, if we applied the same timing for an extension to another project at the same meeting, then it would be arbitrary to not apply that here. I don't I don't think that's defensible whatsoever, but I will go on record saying that I'm going to check every single extension permit that comes in from now on, because I think we do need to apply that. And even if we haven't done that historically, that's what the regulations say. So if you are a project representative asking for extensions, please submit them in writing 30 days prior. I will say that I looked up what the DEP requires under the state wetland regulations, and it's 30 days in writing as well. So there is reliable justification to make sure that moving forward, we are serious about that 30 days. Well, that's my thoughts here.
Thank you, Seth. I agree. I think we need to tighten this up for sure. I was not aware that we were as loose consistently. Brian?
Thanks. Maybe just to offer a suggestion that maybe it's only a 2-year extension, and we would be happy to meet the commission out here and talk about what additional information you may like to see, but and work out anything out in the future.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that, because I do think the site's dynamic enough that, again, a site visit would probably be wise from us. So thank you.
Or even a 1 year if the commission is.
Yeah. So at this point, commissioners, we have 3 1-year extensions requested. They'll take, again, 1 year or 2 to get their project done. And if stated they're going to get it done this time.
Within 2 years.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair, if you like.
Sure. For how many years, Mark? For 1-1-year extension? Okay, so Commissioner Beal has made a motion to issue 1-1-year extension. Is there a second? I'll go ahead and second that one. So by roll vote, Beal?
Aye.
Engelborg?
Abstain.
Arisman, aye. Phillips? Oh, you're muted, Maureen.
Press the wrong button. Sorry. It's not going to be aye. So it's either going to be nay or an abstain. I guess I will abstain.
Okay, so I am a little confused on where this leaves us, since there's only 2 members in agreement. Is that enough to pass this, Jeff?
I believe it is.
Okay.
Oh,
Madam Chair, if you would like some clarification just on this one issue, the HDC just went through this exact same situation where 2 members abstained and 2 members voted in favor of something. And according to town council, I'm not talking about the merits, but according to town council, we appealed this all the way to the selectmen or select board, that does carry because 2 members voted in favor and 2 members abstained, which is an entirely different issue had any one of those members recused. So they have said to the HDC that 2 members that voted in favor, 2 members abstained, it carried because of the 2 members that voted in favor. So we've just went through this with the HDC.
Okay, thank you for that perspective, Linda. So I guess we'll say that carries with myself and Commissioner Beal in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone's patience.
Yeah, thank everyone for their time.
Yes. And again, I always appreciate abutters and neighbors coming in. It's important information for us, even if it doesn't always go the way you would wish. All right, so that will move us on to, oh, Maureen.
Yeah, are we going to schedule a site visit still, or has that? I just wanted to know whether
Sure.
It's an open permit, so we can schedule site visits to open permits.
Yep.
Yeah, we can go on our next regular site visits before the next regular hearing as well. We can certainly schedule that in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that moves us on to other business approval of minutes from February 10th. Thank you, Terry, for the minutes. If nobody has any amendments, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes? Linda?
A motion.
Is there a second? Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And again, Terry, thank you. Monitoring reports, didn't see any enforcement actions or potential enforcement actions.
So I have one for tonight. I'm just kind of requesting that you guys authorize this to be issued. Let me just bring up my screen just for people to help out a little bit. I just need to bring it up. I jumped around too much. I happened to be taking a detour going downtown the other day to avoid a fuel truck. And a lot that I've looked at a couple times with a few different people is experience a pretty significant level of disturbance. So it'll be a little hard to see because my screen's going to be small. But if everyone can see the highlighted parcel here in green, this is a parcel 21 Meter Street. So this is Meter here. Washington Street is up on this side. French Street's here. So this lot, just to kind of run through my history with the lot a little bit and kind of why I'm bringing this in front of you now. Even as recently as about a year ago, was on site, and you can kind of see the brambly area that's there in the back, and then that runs along the side. I had met a few of the consultants that we see, one of them on the site there, to look at that site and talk about the potential of an isolated vegetated wetland. On our inspection there, we viewed some cattails, we viewed a pretty significant stand of jewelweed, which is another kind of wetland indicator species. And the folks that were on the site at the time indicated that they had seen some hydric soils, and in our look on that site with them that same day, we felt we had seen some as well, and kind of left it at that because they weren't looking to do any work. They were just kind of fact finding and dealing with it. So be that what it's may, it's also within, and I'll flip it on just so everyone can see it really quickly. Sorry, it's on the wrong one. And hazard mitigation, you can see it's pretty clearly, even with the square that didn't render, pretty clearly within the 100-year floodplain within the AE zone. So it's clearly within land subject to coastal storm flowage. So it's a site that would require permitting to do work. I happened down Meter Street, and that's what I saw. So the lot's been completely stripped of vegetation. Someone clearly tried to excavate an area. You can see groundwater that was standing within the hole that was left behind. Just for frame of reference, Washington Street would be where my mouse pointer is on that side of the lot, and this would be the more landward side over on this side. So I'm standing on Meter Street properly. So I feel pretty convinced that there's been some pretty significant disruption to a potential vegetated wetland, clearly some work to land subject to coastal storm flowage. There's this little, I hesitate to call it a retaining wall, but landscape timbers that have been installed around some of the perimeter of the lot. To me, it looks pretty clear that they're going to try to put some fill where we're going to. I managed to reach out to the agent listed as the agent for the LLC and explain the situation to them and that work had to stop, and also spoke to someone who had done some work previously for them. If they had a good contact, that work needed to cease there. We followed up with another inspection today and told some folks that were there that work had to stop on the site. But we are looking to issue an enforcement action to cease and desist at this point and kind of order a plan for restoration of that disturbed area and the land subject to coastal storm flowage back to its original grade, just to get started. Hopefully that made sense to everybody.
It did. I'm glad that you needed to take that little detour because that's
You can thank Harbor Fuel. So
that's a pretty massive shift on that property. So yeah, would somebody like to make the motion?
I'll make that motion.
Seth got you, and then Maureen actually got you with the second.
Oh my God.
I know. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Ericksman, aye, Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to reports. We don't have Crack with us today. CPC.
No report to make at this time.
Okay. NP and EDC.
We haven't had a meeting since I last reported.
Okay. Thank you, Maureen. So that moves us on to commissioners' comments. Linda?
Another well-run meeting, Madam Chairman. I wish all my meetings ran this smoothly with you.
Thank you.
It doesn't happen on any of my other boards. Sorry.
Well, I appreciate that. I know I had Scott Leonard send me a message. He formerly ran the Marine Mammal Alliance of Nantucket, I believe is what their name is. And he contacted me about seal pups that are getting harassed a little bit when people are delivering sand to some of our project areas. And he kind of mentioned the Eel Point area and then was worried about kind of the Sconset area. And he just was kind of putting it on the radar as far as our permitting goes, especially like, you know, this time of year where you have those young pups. It's important that they not be disturbed by machinery and things because their moms might abandon them. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I'm not sure if they're gonna, you know, kind of present something more formally, but I definitely thought that was an issue worth bringing up.
Yeah, I can reach out. There's a few agencies that work with the state that deal specifically with marine mammals like that and see if they have any information or guidance for beach nourishment activities too, if it's going to come in.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will say that if anybody sees activities that are deemed intentionally disruptive to seals, please call the environmental police officer and he will come and assess the situation. It is a federal wildlife crime under the Marine Mammal Protected Act to change the behavior of protected marine species. So it gets into some interesting scenarios when, you know, operators may not even know they're there or aren't doing anything intentional. But if you do see intentional harassment, definitely call the EPO.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, Seth. Any other commissioners' comments? No, so we'll move on to administrator staff reports.
I just have one really quickly. It's a question that a couple people came up with through the week, and I just wanted to just do an open session to go through and explain that Ben Timon has requested an executive session with you guys to go over some strategy and as a little bit of follow-up for how the compliance workshop will interact with the pending case. He has requested that to take place as part of our next meeting. I know he and I had talked about maybe doing it tonight, but he wanted to get through a lot of material to be ready and have a chance to watch that compliance workshop in its entirety again. So he has asked for that day to be available for executive session. I know some people had talked about maybe wanting to do it tonight, but I think he felt like he would be more prepared then and would be a little further along in reviewing all of those things. So that's the hope. So if people are interested in that, I think we're happy to schedule that to go forward. Another update on that as well. The administrative record for that is due on the 15th of March. So that's like the complete record of everything. So we've been sending that and getting that ready to send to him as well to finalize, but we're going to have that in probably early, knock on wood. And then as a reminder to folks, I am away next week. So if you have questions or concerns, feel free to still report them to the office, report them to Lisa, and she may be able to send someone, Morgan may be able to go and take a look at something if it's pressing. Then we have some other means to deal with it internally. But if you have questions that can wait, I'll be back the Monday after break. Like I feel like half of Nantucket is all leaving. So we'll all be around. So be patient if you send an email. I may not respond right away because I'm not checking email next week. I'm just telling you all that now. So
Get ready for a ton of violations when you get back because they know the cat's away.
See, but what they don't know is that there are a lot more of us than there used to be. So we send people all around now. So it's hard to sneak stuff by as well as easy as it was before. So, and you never know where the Harbor fuel truck may be parked delivering, I'm pretty sure it's Harbor Fuel. And we have to just take a detour turn by happenstance and see something and go, whew, doesn't look right. So sometimes you get lucky.
That is true. Well, Jeff, if that's all you have, we're kind of at the end of this meeting. So does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn? Maureen, I'll give Linda the second. So by roll vote, Beal.
Aye.
Engelborg.
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Phillips.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And Jeff, I'm
Thank you.
assuming I'll be signing tomorrow after school.
I'm going to try to get it ready. Lisa will be here next week. So she may be doing it. Are you here next week or are you away?
I was supposed to be away, but it's a little bit up in the air now, but I still, if possible, like to get them off my plate tomorrow.
We're going to endeavor to have them done. So if everyone could check their email in the morning, I'll try to have them all digitally done for people to sign by 9. And then those who don't sign digitally, if they could just try to make a plan to be here anytime after like 2 or 3, that would be great.
Okay.
I may have to come just before 2 because I have a Zoom meeting for contract review at 2. So I'll try to come.
Hopefully have it already.
Okay.
All right.
I will contact you and Ashley directly to resolve that.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, you guys too.
Good night.